there, you have to allow your video.
I'm gonna ask to start video, so let me see if that works.
Okay, start my video.
And then Janine, the people in the public will be have to be brought into the space or not? They are just there.
No, so they'll need to be brought into the space. Hi, Gwen. Now we see you.
We see you. So I'll ask you to do that, right?
Yes. So if there's anybody you want to bring in, you can just tell me and I'll put them over.
And I think I'm going to ask the member of the committee to raise their hand as well, so that it's a little more organized.
Okay.
And then you can tell them who's next. You can see who's next. Right.
We have a few people already on as attendees. So.
Oh, you do? Okay. Let me see. Participants. 3 attendees. 3.
Vicky's on.
Yeah, Vicky is there. Hello, Vicky. How are you?
Oh, well, you can't hear them unless we allow them to talk. So if you want to
bring over, that's fine. Yeah. All right.
People can also use the chat function to.
The what?
The chat function people can use the chat function to send in messages.
Yes. I think people are starting to get the hang of it, you know?
Yeah. Maybe.
Maybe, right? I know. Okay, and I'll read the introduction.
Okay.
Oh, we have another Janine coming in.
The other person who's logged on as Janine, tell me who you are so I can change your name on here.
This is funny.
Oh, everyone's.
Oh, here is another one.
Hey, Janine, can you hear me right now?
Yes. Who's this?
It's Paul.
Oh, okay.
I'm on my phone. I'm in a car heading back to my apartment. Once I get home, I don't know how to mute though.
Okay.
Mute is *6.
Yeah, but am I showing up on the video? I'm seeing video too.
No, I don't see you as video. If you're using your phone,
we have a name.
If you're using it from the car and you're using it on your phone, you might be in like driving mode. If you switch the screen
I
over,
am, yeah.
yeah, if you switch the screen over to the right, it should show up.
Yeah, because I can see everybody else.
Are you driving?
No, I'm in a car. I'm being driven.
Oh, okay.
I'm in an Uber from a meeting, heading home now.
Oh, okay.
I had in my head that this meeting started at 6:30, so my schedule got a little too tight on me,
Yes, yes, they changed the time.
Yeah.
which is fine.
There is Pam. I think you need to change Pam and Tina, Janine.
Yeah. So let me just rename them. Sorry.
So I think it's *6 to mute, right?
*6.
It
Yes.
starts at 6 o'clock.
*6. Okay, I'm gonna mute myself, and I'm probably not gonna talk again until I get back to my desk.
Okay.
So Betty knows I'm running late. She's gonna represent me
Yeah.
as CLU co-chair. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay.
Can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Okay.
How come Tina became Janine became Tina, and Tina is back to be Janine?
I think she rejoined.
Yeah, I'll
Tina, you cannot rejoin because you change name every time.
the audio wasn't working.
Oh.
Well, I had to do that. There we go. I'm tired of being myself, Janine.
This is Brett. Who else is coming in? Paul. My God, we are far away from the quorum, right?
Yeah.
What's the quorum? How many? Oh, for transportation, we need to be.
I think I counted 27. Let me see.
No, but we need two separate quorum, right?
What do
No?
we? So there's 20.
I bet you that a lot of people are going to think that it was starting at 6:30.
I mean, I send the email around saying 6. So
No,
hopefully.
no. I know. Look at Paul in his Paul in his, you look like you are going to operate on someone. I know what you're going to do. You are going to operate on the plan. Oh, you froze now.
Christine, I don't know if you saw that I sent you some notes.
Yes, I saw
okay.
that. I read half of it.
Yeah, last minute. I probably will be able to stick around to the end, but there's a
Oh, good.
small chance I might get a phone call that will tell me I can't.
Thank you for the input. Another Janine joined us.
Oh, there she was. She changed her name.
Oh, she did that.
Popular name.
Yes, Sarah. Good. Mm-hmm. Well, just to be safe when you vote, you.
Even though the email said that the link is unique to us, I think everyone needs to rename themselves because everyone's showing up as Janine Pretente. Or at least this one gentleman is.
Yes, so Zoom sent around a link for everyone that they could use, but then I sent a backup link with my name on it just in case it never gets to them for some reason. So I think everyone's just using the backup link that I sent.
Yeah, so everybody can rename themselves. You just hover over your screen or your name under participant and just rename yourself.
Gwen, you're on video.
She is. There she is. Hey, Gwen.
Hi, Gwen.
Still on mute, unfortunately, Gwen, but we do see you.
I guess you're really hi to everybody, but it's my first time seeing Gwen in like 4 or 5 months because she hasn't had video. So
Yeah, we were able to hear her before, so maybe she just has to unmute later.
There she is. I see her now.
And why am I Janine?
Oh, because you used my link to join.
So we can rename you. Betty will rename you.
Oh, you will? Okay. All right.
I think I'm okay. Looks
Can
like
we vote on what we're going to rename her?
Betty, I always forget. I'm sorry. It's M-A-C-K-I-N or E-N?
That's perfect. That's perfect. Thank you.
Got my names right, Jesse.
What?
I said I got my names right. And then
So nice to see everybody.
Yeah, Bird, it was the backup link. Everyone used the backup link, so you gotta rename yourself.
Why am I called Janine?
everyone changed the name today.
Everyone
Okay.
everyone used the latest email and didn't see that it was a backup link, so the backup link was just Janine's link.
Okay. That's in large part because we all have such trouble, I certainly do, speaking for myself, remembering where the damn link is in my email mess.
I know it's tricky. It's very tricky. I usually try to print out where it's, who sent it when, There must be some easier way of doing it.
Just to make sure everybody's aware, you have about 18 people in the public attendee forum, so you have members of the public here.
So don't say anything silly.
Like
Our chair is in the public also, who I wonder if we should bring over.
Yeah, I just brought him over.
Oh, okay.
His hand was raised.
Now, Janine, are you going to do the Zoom first logistics discussion? Then Christine will do the one as co-chair.
Betty, I'm doing the introduction.
Oh,
and,
but
and
the
then
whole
I'll
thing?
turn
The
over
whole.
Betty, why don't you wait until I turn over to you, okay?
Oh, no problem. No problem.
Okay. All right.
So I'll be sharing the screen, and then you guys can just let me know when to switch the slides.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to kick off now. I presume we have the quorum. So welcome to my name is Christine Berthet, and I'm the co-chair of CB4 Transportation Committee. Dale Corvino is my co-chair, is supposed to join us. And today we are going to start the meeting as a joint meeting with the Chelsea Land Use Committee, which is chaired by Betty McIntosh and Paul Devlin. I'm just going to go through some administrative information for managing the meeting, and then I will turn it over to Betty and Paul. So per the governor's executive order 202.1, we are running the meeting remotely. It's being recorded and transcribed, and the recording of the meeting will be posted on our board's YouTube page, where we are making a lot of money with advertisement. How will we run this meeting is as follows. Well, everyone beside the speaker will stay muted throughout the meeting. Members of the public who have joined through the online link will be able to ask questions and make a brief statement on the item after the presentation and the committee. After the presentation is over, I will inquire of committee members have clarifying questions. The committee member will signify that they have a question by raising their hands in the section under participants. Janine will give them, or I will give them the next turn. And then for those people which are online, if they want to online with a phone, if they want to raise their hand, they can do *9. Once the committee question have been answered, we'll take question and statement for the public. And we will report on any testimony and correspondence we have received before that. And if the member of the public want to ask a question, etc., they can raise their hand or press 9. And following the public comment portion, the committee will begin their discussion and will conclude with a decision or vote on a recommendation. Now, at the end of, we are going to do this from 6 to 7. At 7 o'clock, if we'll try to take a vote on what we have discussed. And if some items have not been discussed yet and our land use committee, the land use committee will have access to another room on Zoom where they can finish the discussion of land use items. And we are doing that because we have a presentation from DOT at 7 o'clock that we cannot delay. So I hope it's clear for everybody. We're going to try to be concise. And I want to now to turn over to, first we need to take a roll. Do we need an attendance call, Jesse?
I will do so. You're fine for quorum's sake.
Right.
But I will, I'll mark everybody's attendance here.
Okay, all right.
There's a couple
now that we have,
Christine,
yes.
if you don't mind just interjecting, just because I am not the host of this meeting. Janine, do you have the ability to create the breakout room? Because I'm not seeing it on my end.
Can you run me through how to do it, or send me a text on how?
It's on the bottom though. Do you have does it say breakout room? Does it give the option to create a breakout room?
I don't see it on the bottom where everything else is.
All right, so we'll come up with that solution by 7 o'clock.
Right.
And I just wanted to highlight a couple people that are in attendance. Vicky Barbaro from CB5 is here, and Carl Wilson from the Speaker's Office. Gail Brewer from Manhattan Borough President's Office is here. Maya Barlow from State Senator Brad Hoylman's office is here. Nabila Malik from Department of City Planning, and Pauline Ferrer from Department of Health is here. There might be other folks I might have missed. I apologize, but that's a quick read.
Okay.
Could Gwen?
And we tell them hello to all the attendees and all our elected officials. We are very honored that you have joined us, and Vicky as well. And so now I'm going to turn to Betty, who is going to kind of MC the portion of the ESD presentation and question and answers.
Good evening, everybody. I just want you to know that we're divided up the list of an outline that you have received earlier. this afternoon. So if you have access or have already printed that outline, it would help you. This newest version has notes, where we have identified issues and concerns so that we can streamline this meeting so you don't have to repeat things that we've identified already. In terms of introducing this, I would like you to know that what our job is tonight is to review and comment on the draft scope of the EIS for the Empire Station Complex. And we want to do that because we can propose that additional topics be added to the draft EIS scope and perhaps challenge some analyses, ways of studying and criteria. Our comments will go to the New York State Empire State Development Corp, ESD. ESD is proposing a GPP, a general project plan, which will describe the properties to be acquired. Now, can we have the first slide, Janine?
Yes, I'll screen share.
This first slide is going to show you the project area. And here you see an orange line going north-south, which shows the boundary between Community District 5 and Community District 4. And you'll see we're on the west of 8th Avenue, and we have less territory in this project. Our area includes the Farley Office Building, Moynihan Hall, and Site 1 of the 8 development sites. You can see that in the yellow, just west of the orange line. The whole project area is from 6th Avenue to 9th, 34th to 30th, and it includes Madison Square Garden, Moynihan, and Farley. They're in gray. They're not really technically being addressed in this proposal. Can we see slide 2? Here you see, let's see, I think we need the regional context slide, Janine. Can we go to that one? Yeah, perfect. Okay. This bright purplish color is the project area. And you'll see this map shows that the area is in the middle of transit, Long Island Railroad, Metro North Path, New Jersey Transit, Amtrak, and New York City subways. It's a very key hub of transportation. Now we're going to return to figure 1. And there we go. The general goal of this project is to create a world-class intercity transportation hub, to create a modernized commercial district in a revitalized area, generate revenue from the project's new development that would fund improvements to Penn Station, expand Penn Station with below-grade expansion of tracks and platforms south of the existing Penn Station, will increasing the capacity 40% with an additional 260,000 daily travelers. Would improve subway stations and transit connections with Penn Station, and implement public realm improvements, which include widening sidewalks, new open space plaza, and improved pedestrian safety. Project description is 20 million square feet, 9 million which are not as of right. You can see on this graphic, there are 8 development sites with commercial uses, office and retail uses. The project includes 2 hotels with over 1,000 rooms, 400 parking spaces, and all the buildings on the 8 development sites as proposed would be demolished. Moving on to land use and zoning, most of the project area, figure 3, is the zoning. Whoops. Well, let's do this one. Most of the project area is located in the Hudson Yards zoning special district. If we go to the zoning slide, Janine. There we go. Perfect. The top graphic shows in red the project area, and you see that the Hudson Yards Special District is in gray, which covers most of the area and has special use, bulk, and urban design controls. The area south of West 31st Street is governed by several other districts. Now let's go back to the massing slide, Janine. There we go. Okay. Here, this shows the massing. Overrides to existing zoning or local laws are proposed in the draft scope, but they're not described. There would be no height limits, and these buildings could be higher than shown in this graphic, but we don't really know how that would turn out. The proposed FAR is 33. So if you only used half of a site, it could have a 6-story building. And theoretically, according to Community Board 5, you could get tallest buildings in the world. I should mention that Community Board 5 had a 3-hour meeting on this, very well conducted, and many issues came out that are included in italics in your outline that you've gotten. Some recommendations about this zoning is that the scope should include the existing zoning map and describe the existing zoning. The proposed overrides to existing zoning or local laws should be described. The scope should include approximate heights for the buildings and in terms of number of stories, so the average reader could get an idea of that. There's site 1, which you remember is the one that's in District 4. One could propose limiting the heights of that building to decrease the shadows on Farley and Penn South, and we have land use recommendations for that that are different. Their Community Board 5 initiated a proposal to relocate Madison Square Garden to a different location to increase track capacity and include additional enhancements. They pointed out that the permit for the Madison Square Garden expires in 2023. They also, in Community Board 5, think that the boundaries should be expanded for the project area to include the entire block where Site 6 is and also 34th Street. In terms of socioeconomic conditions, I would like to turn this over to Paul if he's available. Are you available, Paul?
Just barely. Is it possible?
I should start? Should I start?
Yeah, you get started. I just got to my desk now. Sorry.
Should I pause and you want to get going on this, or?
No, if you can go on to the
Okay,
next.
I'll go. I'll
Thank
start.
you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Paul is rushing in from Brooklyn from a work project. Goal 1 is to revitalize the area for commercial development, yet the area could easily be defined as a short walking distance to Penn Station, which would include long-standing residential blocks, where I live, by the way, and local businesses. The goal should include improvements to local residential areas, support of local businesses, and studies could be done to understand the impact of this initiative on residential neighbors. And the assumption is that construction in for the southern expansion of platforms would require complete demolition of all existing structures on the blocks, and a study should be conducted to determine alternative construction methods to allow protection of significant buildings such as churches, iconic hotels, and residential buildings. There is a section in the scope about residential displacement, and there is a table in the report on page 15 that shows that there's an alternative for Site 4. You can see on your map where Site 4 is, for residential of 630 units. And the scope should include all those 630 units in their analyses. There would be 201 residents and 125 units that would be displaced. And we encourage the final scope to identify as many units that are rent stabilized or under other affordable programs, homeless shelters, etc. Indirect residential displacement, the scope says the project would not introduce more than 200 residential units over the no action condition. Our math shows that it would be 505, so the study should be inclusive of the possible displacement of local residents and do a robust analysis. So we also feel that there should be the threshold should be forced for an evaluation for all residential relocation and homeless direct and indirect impacts. Whoops. And then one suggestion we've had is a local organization should be used for the residential displacement issue if 200 residents have to be displaced. We believe strongly in affordable housing. At least 30% of market rate housing should be affordable. And the impacts on homeless are important because many homeless people live in Penn Station and on the sidewalks. Are you ready to take over for business, Paul?
No, continue on, please. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem.
I'm trying to find the document you're reading from.
Oh, it's in the Dropbox?
Yeah, that's where I'm looking right now.
Yeah, okay. Now we get on to business displacement. We recommend that analysis should be conducted to show if this location can absorb the amount of office space proposed. It's a huge amount. Some predict that online office work will continue even after the pandemic eases up, and that office space will not be needed at the same levels in existing buildings, no less new buildings. We recommend analyzing the total amount of retail created in the complex, both in both stations and the Moynihan Mall and buildings, and compare to existing retail in a secondary area 38th to 39th west of 8th Avenue. Evaluate how many small businesses will be affected. The current scope assumes no indirect business displacement, stating that new retail will be geared towards new commercial tenants and not displace local businesses. This assumption is based on old formulas, and a study should be conducted using more current guidelines. We suggest Board 5 suggests analysis of the impact on garment district properties, and recommend the type of office necessary to facilitate new jobs,
Hi everyone, my
startups,
apologies. Rob Walker here.
and businesses, Class B and Class C. Now we move on to transportation. Christine?
Yes. So Janine, can you move to the next page? This one, yeah. So the project is intending to, as you can see, create a number of new entrances and new stairways and widen the platform in different locations here. Below grade east-west corridor, connection to all these lines, and having a hallway across that new enhance a new section of the station. Expansion of Penn Station is down there, and fully renovated Penn Station is over here. Now, mind you, it's important to understand that the scoping of this project does not include the discussion of a transportation plan. It assumed that the master transportation plan would be completed in the coming months and will be made available, but we are only talking about, you know, buildings and envelopes here, as well as tracks and plan, but we don't have all the details for that. So it's a little uncomfortable to have this information and not the rest. Next page. Okay, so you see the additional Penn Station entries, as well as relocation of subway stairs here in little blue box, and then the existing or planned Penn Station entry, which are being done as part of the other project which is going on, which is the renovation of the Monument Hall and the renovation of this of the garden. So these are the relay, and just to be clear, all these entrances and all these movement are feasible because they are going to remove all the buildings and rebuild on the top of it. So what they are doing is proposing to put those entrances as a constraint to the developers which are going to sign on to develop those buildings. Next. Along those proposals, there are improvement on what they call the public realm, what I call sidewalk and streets. And what you can see in red are increase of sidewalk by 15 feet, which is essentially saying that the building is going to be built there is a setback of 15 feet from the current line. Then in orange, you see 10 feet setback, which is essentially here, and 5 feet, which affect the building, which is in MCB4, which we feel is really not quite enough. They are also proposing to create shared street on this corridor. And what you know shared street is a street which is essentially limited at 5 miles per hour. It's a little bit like the open streets we have today. There are no parking generally, and emergency could come through, but it's essentially a street for pedestrian and bikes. And it's the same thing here that is being proposed, as well as rebuilt an 8th Avenue bike lane, rebuilt here, and a continuation of the 7th Avenue bike lane, but nothing on 9th Avenue, as you can see. So that's what's being proposed. And again, it's linked to the constraint they will give to the new buildings. Oh, and then I forgot that an open space between those two buildings right here. Okay. And then other plan open spaces here. It's an existing open space which will be made permanent. So next slide. All right, so what is being proposed in transportation is analysis of some intersection to reflect the increase in traffic. And as you can see, the dots represent the analysis. And I think our first blush, exercise is that this is not sufficient, that it should extend to 9th Avenue, where we have entrances to the Lincoln Tunnel, and then go up 8th Avenue further, 8th and 9th Avenue further, to really take into account all the impact on the Lincoln Tunnel entrances. We've also suggest that they do a study of 28th Street, each corner, because this street is very residential, and if there is too much congestion on 30th Street, it will probably overflow to 28th Street. Next. These are the elements of sidewalk, corners, and crossing that are going to be studied. And although they are very extensive on 8th Avenue and 7th, there is none on 9th Avenue. And we really think that there is a large volume of people which are coming from the bus terminal and from the new terminal, which will go further west. And we need to study that, as well as probably some crossings here to link the back of the station to the new Midtown West. So we're going to probably ask a big extension of studying the pedestrian world. And as well as looking at maybe pedestrian is a lot more of the whole complex, it's great to make a pedestrian plaza on 33rd Street, but what about 31st Street? And what about 8th Avenue and 9th Avenue? I think it is an opportunity to say it's a transit center and we want to really focus on pedestrian and buses and etc. Next. That's it? No. What's next?
The last one.
That's the last one, Jenny?
Yeah, that's the last
Okay.
slide.
Okay. So just a quick recap on things that have already caught our eye, and that's what we want you to add to that. So the study of intersection should include much further up and much further west. I think one thing that is clearly not included is the impact of taxis and Ubers and where the stations are going to be. Bicycle demand is not clearly identified. For example, on 33rd and 30th Street, and then on 9th Avenue. And then, you know, if there is 40% more commuters, there are going to be 40% more bike share and bicycles. So where are they all going to be? And the other things which is not very clear is the garbage pickup and the deliveries. Where are they going to be located and how much there is right now? And also the impact on the Madison Square Garden and the large trailers. There is also a bus terminal, which, can you go back maybe to the one just before? No, where we had the buildings, the building and the, yes. On this site here, on site 1, there is currently a long distance bus terminal, and it's imperative that it be relocated during the construction, and certainly that they have a plan for after the construction. For rail and transit, this is going to have a major impact, 40% more people going on the E line, and then the bus terminal is going to have another 40% more going on the E line. So I think it's important to look at all this cumulative impact there. We want to know all the ADA accessible and hope that all the platforms are going to be made accessible. And then I think it would be helpful, even though we are not being asked, to mention that we want a connection to, it would be good that the New Jersey Transit be connected to Grand Central Underground, and that there would be more capacity for that. And for the pedestrian, we really need a lot more, a much more extensive impact of pedestrian demand, and identified all the ways we are going to create more pedestrian space, because today it's already very, very crowded. And with 40% more, I don't think that's going to be really acceptable. And vehicular pedestrian safety, we have, we suggest to create a mid-block raised pedestrian to cross 9th Avenue, and mid-block crossing for all the avenues, so that, you know, and streets, so you don't have to travel so far to cross the street. And then from parking, I mean, there's a lot of question, why do you need so much parking? And we want to suggest that there will be a lot of need for parking for bikes and for bike share station, and maybe some of those parking locations could be used for that. Study the location for trash storage and hotel linen storage, so that none of that is on the sidewalks. And I think that's it. So these are the things that we have already collectively identified, and we want to hear more from you on those issues. So maybe what we can do, Betty, is before we go to the next section, we start to open the discussion on what the people have to say.
Okay. I mean, let's let's give that a try. So why don't we
Okay.
stop that so people could address
Right.
the
Those two
zoning,
things, right.
the density and all that, and the
Right.
transportation.
Right.
So let's go
So
for it.
do we have, I don't see any, okay, the panelists, I don't see any, yeah,
I see David Warren's hand is up.
I don't see it. Okay, David, yes. David, unmute yourself. Or Janine, unmute David. I don't know
Okay,
how
I'm
that-
unmuted. Sorry, I just got to move
Right.
over because others won't be able to hear me because I'm in a community garden with
You're
construction.
good, you're good.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Christine. My questions are the same questions that you asked, but I have further questions also. So the questions
Okay.
you asked were great. I guess we're both elitists. You know, they're building 2 hotels even before these buildings, even before the pandemic. There's been a glut of buildings. Why are they doing that? Rather than spend the money on building underground transit from, like you said, the New Jersey Transit to Grand Central, something like that. Also, they might have mentioned it, but I might have missed it when Betty was speaking about specifically how many affordable housing units will there be. We need to know that because we would like to get as much affordable housing as we can. And the second thing is, and this is going to be a little odd, but when Christine, you mentioned on the side streets, the traffic and all that, we don't want them to use the side streets as truck routes and things like that, that which possibly could happen. So I'm going to go back to my thing, and Dodd has been resistant on doing this, is having cameras on the side streets to make sure that the side streets are not being used as thoroughfare for commercial and truck traffic. And only truck routes are being used as a truck route. And that's basically it. I mean, Christine, thank you. You asked a lot of the questions I asked, especially about the parking spots. That's not necessary. Thank you.
All right, so the next person, I don't know in which order that came up, but Bert?
Looks like Bert was next.
Okay.
Okay, I want to thank both of you. It was a really good presentation. I mean, I read, but not densely. So it really covered the whole piece. Questions I had, some of it was raised, 3 million square feet of offices. Is that really needed right now? I do want to know, maybe I missed it. When they do an indirect impact, a business indirect impact, a residential indirect impact, what's the geography? Now, the direct, of course, is the specific boundaries of the project. But my question is, what's the geography of the indirect? And I'd like an answer to that if anybody knows. Well, and when I hear you, Christine, it just dawned on me. You said 40% increase on commuters on the E-train, 40% da-da-da-da-da, you know, and we're talking about existing commuters leaving the station because those are Long Island Railroad people who are going to Grand Central are not going to use the E-train anymore. But underlying all of that, those numbers are the number of commuters. There has to be economic assumptions about what is going on in the city that produces jobs, that people fill those jobs, and they need to take a train to get to those jobs. Okay? We've lost, and it's not temporary, and it may not be permanent, but we've lost 850,000 jobs in the last couple of months.
Yeah.
Take everybody who looks at the numbers say it's going to take us a long time to get back to where we were last year. Okay? So these number of commuters is based on maybe economic assumptions that don't obtain anymore. And even if they say we will get back to that number, but it's going to take a longer time, so maybe even the staging of the development, forget about how high, what mix between offices and residential community facilities can be dragged out a longer amount of time. If the and I don't, you know, they don't say what their economic assumptions are. What number of jobs did they say New York City is going to have in 2028? They don't. We don't know what they're talking about. which is, I'm sorry, Paul. I'm finished.
Yeah, no, I'd like to point out this is a 16-year proposal. So I think you're right, Bert. The study would take into consideration a longer term prospect of that. And I think that's an important point to bring up. Yes, we need to study long-term impact.
Okay. I'll get back to you, Bert, on the document, the full document as the secondary phase. So if you can find it, I can't find it right now. I don't have it in front of me, but it goes north and it goes a little bit to 10th Avenue, and it has a kind of a weird shape. So I can't really describe what it is.
Okay, because I know,
Yeah.
particularly in your area, between 8th and 9th and 9th and 10th, in the 30s and the 40s, there are mixed in residential and and to the south also, but I think that area is more vulnerable than the area to the south.
Right. I agree. I think this is going to have the hotel, and is going to have a lot of impact on the garment district rezoning we did recently.
Yes.
Okay.
I think Bert, can I just respond to Bert?
Sure, I'm sorry.
I think your point is well taken about the secondary area, and at a minimum, they should have a map showing the secondary area so it's easy for us to understand. And they just mention it very, very quickly. I was trying, it's very hard to find, but, and I think we may want to ask them to expand the secondary districts.
Right.
Your point is well taken.
Right.
Okay.
So, Marty, unmute yourself.
Thank you. First, I'm overwhelmed and impressed by the work that you have already done in this dense document that I am only familiar with as a result of an email that Betty sent me a little bit ago and said you better read it before next Tuesday. This is Wednesday, right? I have comments on the environment, but I believe that's the next section.
Yes.
Yes.
Let me make a general comment about what this document incensed me about. In several places on page 10 is one of the incidences of it. They use the word to describe the neighborhood as insanitary.
Oh, yes.
Yes, yes.
We have just started our social justice working group. I see a bunch of you smiling, but and that's good because your reaction is positive to what I'm saying. The term racist has come to my mind in the use of that term, and my immediate reaction when I first saw it was, you'll remember that Robert Moses, who was the commissioner of the Slum Clearance Committee, they used a similar methodology to clear places that weren't slums. So there is a general flavor of the document that I read that I'm incensed about. I don't know what to do about it, but I think it needs to be changed.
Okay.
And Marty, that I had the same reaction, and I think one of our suggestions will touch upon a academic type way of addressing that. So we'll get back to that later.
Well, it's not just changing the word; it's part of.
No, it's the attitude.
That's right. So the second thing that concerned me, I'm not a religious person, but the church that's on in the way of this, and some of the other historic buildings, that it's so cavalier that we're just going to knock them down. That part of me is thinking about the block that's the little block that's in our district on 31st Street. The Supreme Pizza is probably the best pizza place in our, and that's in the way of this. And it's cavalier that they expand it east and west. It's just a grand taking, and that upsets me as well. These aren't concrete suggestions on how to change what you've looked at. They are gut reactions that I needed to say out loud, and I'll talk more about the environment when you turn the page.
Okay. Wanted to mention that Matt Tide from Dick's office and Luke Wolf from the controller's office have joined us. Thank you so much. The next person is Jeffrey Lefrancois.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and everybody for that fantastic presentation. I think two critical components. One, we have to go through this process to hopefully finally return Penn Station to being a world-class train hall. And this is the unfortunate process we have to go to because the city made a really bad mistake several decades ago. Part of the issue with this entire scope, the way it's laid out, is it's a scope envisioned as if it's still the 1960s. It is car-centric. It is the idea that people come and leave, that we shouldn't plan for the spaces in between buildings, for how folks will get from Penn Station to, or out the back of Moynihan to Brookfield onto Hudson Yards, which, you know, up and down 10th and 11th Avenues, we're going to continue to see development. And I feel strongly that we should be expanding this over to 10th Avenue in terms of the study in the primary phase, not the secondary phase, in how we look at this. Moynihan Station, the west end of it on 9th Avenue, will be a very porous space that travelers will be exiting from to get to Brookfield, to massive towers on 9th Avenue. So, you know, I don't go as far as Marty in terms of using the word cavalier, but the lens that the state has chosen to take is squarely steeped in the 20th century, and it's an embarrassment because we are very squarely in the 21st century, and we have cities like Barcelona and Madrid and, you know, many others running circles around us. And so, what about thinking about the entire area as a transit center, rethinking the streets entirely for people and transit and getting from A to B, not in a private car, and providing for the best movement of goods that we can do so, but that it's a center where a whole bunch of stuff, especially people, need to be able to move in and out of. You know, it's kind of a joke. They're proposing to expand the sidewalk by 5 feet around Site 1 in our district, considering the square footage they're proposing. Key is additional bike lane considerations on 9th Avenue, ensuring it's a part of 8th Avenue, which you mentioned, but I think most importantly, a direct expansion of the scope, perhaps even considering going further north than 34th Street in the beginning, because we really have to consider entering the Lincoln Tunnel as well.
Okay. And we also have Maria Ortiz and Alan Oster, co-chairs of various committees which have joined us tonight. David Solnick next.
Hi, you can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I would just kind of like to reiterate the importance of a more comprehensive planning than I'm hearing. You know, not just, you know, bike lanes. It should be, you know, this should be the bike consideration should be part of a larger bike plan. And of course, now it's not just bicycles, it's also e-bikes and e-scooters. And we're talking about 16 years from now, it's going to be, you know, multiple forms of transportation that all need to be considered now, not just the usual categories of pedestrians, bicycles, cars. Also like to reiterate or maybe expand on the idea of a comprehensive system for refuse removal as part of this entire project. I mean, we're not going to, this is probably the point where we can actually have that input rather than waiting for, you know, zoning changes that get imposed on the developers. If we can get this into the, you know, into the RFPs or into the whatever is directing the developers from the get-go, then we can, you know, we can ask for a system that, you know, accommodates refuse and not, obviously not on the sidewalks, but it's got to be more thought out than, oh, how do we solve this by not putting it on the sidewalk? I mean, it's a, you know, is a big project that requires a comprehensive plan for refuse as a whole. And I don't,
Okay.
you know, I don't have any more specific comments about that.
All right.
I think that's
Okay, good. Agreed. Brett Furfur.
Okay, yeah, thank you. This is obviously potentially the biggest thing that this whole area is going to be dealing with for, you know, quite some time. So the question I actually have transportation-wise is wondering if they're talking about doing transportation modeling and transportation impacts, assuming congestion pricing being rolled out, or if they're using current conditions. Because if we are assuming congestion pricing is going to happen as scheduled for 2021, and they're not including that in their impact assessments, we could be underestimating how much space could be available for other public and pedestrian use, because that would mean potentially fewer cars on the street. So that's the question I think we should try to get.
The assumption they are making, they have confirmed that, is that they are going to use pre-COVID numbers. And one of the requests I have added in that is that they also look at Lincoln Tunnel traffic, because in this area, there is a lot of traffic which is coming from the Lincoln Tunnel. Right. So therefore, which is going or coming. So I think they need to look at those trends as well as what's happening with the traffic itself.
Right. Well, no, the pre-COVID makes sense because COVID, hopefully by 2028, it's not going to be an issue. No, the issue I have is if congestion pricing is scheduled to roll out in 2021, as you know, legislation was passed to do. If they're doing impact statements that are assuming congestion pricing is not going to be a reality, then they could be overestimating how many vehicles will actually be on the street, and underestimating how much public space and pedestrian space will be available to plan for the public. That's my question.
Right. I think that's a very good. It's a very good point. Very good point.
Yeah, I mean, just the other thing I would point out, because I know there's a lot of questions, people mentioning, you know, we don't know how much commercial demand might be down, et cetera. Just one thing to keep in mind, that while we are going to be fighting the good fight on doing what's right for our community and looking out for negative impacts, the idea of doing a higher density commercial development on top of the city's biggest transportation hub really is a sustainable idea, big picture. You know, and the domino effect it will have on the rest of the city could mean opportunities for additional development, you know, converting commercial to residential, et cetera, in areas where commercial is aging. So this is a potential catalyst that I think is worth noting. So we should be careful how we're looking at the commercial. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. David Olocal.
Hi, I'm sorry I had to sign in a little bit late and hope this wasn't already covered. But there's an image in the proposal that's got like a 3D aerial view of the site with the buildings in blue. I don't know if we could go to that. Janine, are you controlling the screen?
Yeah, I can screen share again. Give me 1 second.
But I just wanted to know whether all of that development that's shown is actually required to pay for the improvements to Penn Station that are proposed.
Is it this one?
No,
yeah, it's like a
figure
that's
3.
It, right there.
There it is. That's a really good question, David. They don't specifically say, you know, that the development will cost X and each site will, you know, generate X amount of funds. They don't specifically say that. So we could put that in our comments.
Right, I think they do
and
also.
CB5, one comment also, CB5 made a comment that they are going to talk about the financing and saying, you know, for example, let's assume that in 2 years you have a new administration and there is a huge federal grant to Amtrak to do what they have to do. Then, you know, the density or the profile of this project should be changed.
Yeah, we just, on the outline that we haven't gotten to the end part, but the last topic is funding, and a number of funding suggestions are there, including what if the federal government came up with more money, we could have less dense buildings.
Right, I would just like to point out the discrepancy in scale between the context and the blue buildings, which even dwarf a lot of Hudson Yards, and the amount of displacement of, existing urban fabric and scale. It's pretty remarkable. I agree with what Marty had to say about the loss of individual buildings. This is like a loss of cityscape wholesale. And I'd like to address some of those buildings maybe later in our conversation, unless now is a good time.
Let's do it later.
Later is good.
Later is
Okay.
good.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Wait a minute, who is the next person here? Colin Wright.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for all the work that you have put into this proposal. Clearly, a lot of work has gone into this, so thank you. There's a lot here, and I won't repeat a lot of, I agree with a lot of what's been said, and I won't repeat too much of it. I just wanted to add a small piece when it comes to the ADA expansion, ADA entrance expansion for transit. What we've seen in the past when, for example, the MTA contracts with private developers to construct ADA station enhancements, sometimes there's confusion over the ongoing maintenance and upkeep of the elevators. And so I would hope that any, elevators that are constructed in a public-private partnership or any sort of model like a transit bonus model, that there's strong contractual remedies and obligations on the part of property developers to keep elevators maintained and in proper working order. Just a couple, I think last month, this came out in the Waterfront Parks Committee with Hudson, the Highline, and the property developers at one of the buildings along the Highline, and it's something that's really endemic across the entire city and city agencies. So I'd like to see that highlighted within our proposal.
That's very good.
Thank
Will do. Dale, our co-chair of transportation.
Hi, everyone. Sorry to be late. I'm having some connection issues out where I am. I just want to, and I sent this along to the, with the outline. So it was just a point that I made in the earlier conversations that I don't think got captured, but and it's a little bit of overlap of transportation planning and land use. So I was hoping to see that the buildings planned, whether they're commercial or residential, have coordinated facilities such as like loading, delivery entrances, passenger drop-off areas, parking lot entrances, as David mentioned, sanitation containment spaces, and all the off-site services that they may or may not be employing, like laundry service. We've seen a lot of this stuff offloaded to our sidewalks and streets in the district. And this is an opportunity to make sure that all of the buildings are required to have that kind of function space within the building, and think about it in advance and coordinate it with our transportation goals.
Yeah.
Yep.
I agree. I think we got that. We caught that.
Oh, okay. I might have missed it.
Yeah. No, that's okay. That's okay. Now we don't have any more panelists, so let's see the attendees who has their hands up. Anyone?
I think Tina wants to say something.
Yeah.
Oh, how come I didn't have that?
Okay, so just a couple recommendations in terms of sanitation. I would love to see something where refuse could be moved and collected underground, instead of having all of these garbage trucks one after the other. That's a lot of office space. It's a lot of hotel space. So if there's some way of having an underground system. The Highline at one point was looking at a vacuum tube system which may or may not be appropriate for this, but I think there are systems in use around the world that we can take a look at, or they should take a look at.
All right, we'll put it in. Very good. I don't see anyone. Janine, do you see anyone from the public who wants to speak?
There's no hands up, but there's two questions in the Q&A section.
Where are the Q&A?
I don't know if you can see it, but I can read them out. So the first one says 9th Avenue has no plans for widening sidewalks or bike lanes, but is one of the most dangerous areas for pedestrians and cyclists.
Yes.
Is there plans to change 9th Avenue?
Okay, so they don't have any plan to change it, but we are putting that as a very strong requirement in our comments.
Okay.
And then there's a second question that says are there any public drinking fountains?
Public what? Drinking fountain?
Yes.
I don't think it was mentioned. Neither were public bathrooms mentioned either.
Well, this is good, right?
Yep.
Because
Okay.
if you are in a train station, I think there should be some facilities for travelers and local.
Oh, well, yeah, the Long Island Railroad has bathrooms and stuff, I guess, yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. So I don't know, Betty
Pam Wolf,
from.
Pam Wolf has her hand up.
Yeah.
Hi. I have
Hi,
my hand up.
Pam.
Hello,
Hi, Pam.
everyone.
Hi, Pam.
I had my hand up virtually and physically.
I couldn't. it's funny. I don't see it virtually, so I don't know.
I
Oh,
just
now I
looked
have.
at it.
Oh, I have Viren now. Right. Okay. After that.
Oh.
Go ahead.
So apropos of what Tina was saying about the underground system for refuse disposal, look no further than Roosevelt Island, which has its system that has worked extremely well over many decades now. That's just something that you might want to put in there.
Okay.
Pneumatic tube is the term we're looking for.
Right. Okay, now I'm giving Viren, you're up now.
Yeah, just two comments. One is I think we should request for a phasing plan. If it is a 15-year plan, we want to see what gets done when. Second, it's a comment much more than, it's a suggestion much more than a question is, since we have both building height issues not very clear and the width of expanded sidewalks, I mean, we're still following, as Jeffrey put it, 20th century model for 21st century transportation hub. I think we could do better than 15 feet, and it could become as kind of a negotiating sort of tool where the height gets related to how further away you are from the curb line.
More than 15 feet, right? Yeah, that's a good point. And then Betty, I don't know whether we talked about that. I know it comes into the portion which is more later on as alternate, but I just want to put out there before we vote and split, that you know, more affordable housing, more residential, more contextual into the building being the site one, you know, it would be good to have that as a residential building, and which is more consistent with Penn South, you know, from a height standpoint. And that whole building on site one is you know, as a residential building could have a lot of good function, like giving us the affordable housing, giving us a community facility, and giving us a place to have small shops which have been displaced, you know. So that block may be a place where we want to push for them to study that as an alternate, but it's later in the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. It's on our list, but it's good to mention it now.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know how we do that. I mean, you know, what the question is, you have heard all the question, you have heard all of our proposal. What we would do is Betty and I, we would merge all that in a document, and that would be the document. And in fact, that's what you are voting for.
Christine Rob Walker, who's calling in, has his hand up too.
Oh, now it does. Okay, it just happened. Rob, how are you?
I'm good. Sorry about that. Just to echo what Jeffrey was saying about pedestrian traffic, we're going to have a lot of people going from Des Moines train station. 9th Avenue is at grade, but by the time you get over to 10th Avenue, it's on the 2nd level. Manhattan West has got around the side of 10th Avenue and 31st a pedestrian walkway. And if there was any way of extending the scope of this to where we could turn around and maybe get a bridge on 10th Avenue going from 31st Street to 30th Street and then connecting across the street with a bridge either through the spur, but some way that would connect pedestrian traffic through Metro West over to Hudson Yards. Because as Jeffrey said, we've got those 2 major buildings in Metro West, plus we've got all the traffic with Hudson Yards, and with all the increase of traffic going on, especially with pedestrian foot traffic, it would ease that. It would make it easier to get from point A to point B. So that's it.
All right.
Okay.
Makes
I
sense.
think, Christine, that the way Board 5 did it was rather efficient. They said we have a lot of suggestions here that have been put forth, and we'd like to put those in the letter, and that we could vote for those things, and then, but ask, is there anything that's been mentioned that somebody really objects to? Would that be fair, easy way to do
Yeah,
it?
that's good.
So is there anything that has been mentioned that anyone thinks is a really bad idea?
Oh, Jeffrey, yes. Yes.
I do worry about, I understand we have long fought to preserve the aesthetic, the feel, the look, the actual architecture of our communities. But we are a world-class 21st century city suffering from mistakes of the 20th century. And to tie a development like this to the preservation of a church, when the diocese just announced the idea that it's closing 20 churches, I really worry about how that hamstrings us both 5 years from now and 50 and 100 years from now. And I would hope that when the Land Use Committee, I'm sure we'll get into this much deeper, they recognize the potential for return here from the perspective of a transit center, not just about one single building on a block.
Okay, Marty.
I am ready to vote for this document, but there's much more to be said.
Yes, there is. We're going to continue the conversation as soon as
the
this
next
vote
room.
is over. We're going to have
Right.
a breakout room.
Right.
So
Pam?
then
Okay.
it's process, not content. I'm voting for a document that's in formation.
Kind of.
Yeah. So my thought on that is that the things that, as Betty just pointed out, the things that we just discussed now are components that will go into the letter to be presented to the full board. Chelsea Land Use is now going to move into a breakout room to do a continuation of topics that are more specific to land use, like community facility space and historic preservation issues and things like that. But we need to move off so that they can continue on with transportation issues. So we tried to tackle all the transportation concerns of this DSD proposal, but so the Transportation Committee and the Joint Committee can vote on what we just discussed. CLU can move over to a breakout room, and we're going to continue conversation, and then CLU can vote on what CLU wants to add to the letter. And then Betty and Christine are going to work to merge all of the information together into one letter to present to the board for a final vote.
So I could make a motion that we only vote on the transportation related issues coming out of the Transportation Committee.
No. We are
discussed,
making a motion to vote on everything we have discussed now. And the only question up to now, that doesn't mean that it's limited. There are going to be more. Okay, so it's like a phase one. And the question was, is there anybody has a concern with what has been discussed to date? Pam, do you have something there?
Well, not exactly. I just wanted
okay,
to,
so if it's not, then you can maybe you can wait for the second part.
Okay, I just wanted the members of your committee to be aware that what we're contemplating is something on the scale of Robert Moses on steroids, and it is another century, and we need to protect the fabric, the existing fabric of not just one historic building, the church, but many others that are in this site. I just wanted to say that.
All right, and Marty, you wanted to say something?
I'm perfectly ready to approve what we've talked about so far.
Okay.
I just don't want to go into the breakout room and have somebody say to me, well, that overlaps with transportation. It's going to. The conversation, there are no neat borders here. So I'm perfectly happy with Christine and Betty merging the conversations, but let the conversations stay free and not worry about the borderlines of transportation.
Okay, we'll do our best.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we need a motion?
I've moved to recommend the items we've discussed as requesting to incorporate those into the scope based on our discussion this evening before land use moves into its own meeting.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay.
Great.
Michael Noble, are you?
Wait, no, that's voting for.
Oh, okay.
So no one is opposed, and no one is abstaining, and no one is P&E.
Right.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
So now,
I'm sorry, Paul and Betty, before you guys break out, can I ask one quick question about you? I may be missing this stuff in the scope, but there was also the discussion about the developers and like the selection process, not favoring a mega developer who would handle many of the parcels or a lot of the parcels, and also the issue about minority business enterprises being included in the scope.
Well,
Is that there?
the minority businesses for the construction is in, but not choosing a mega developer slipped by us. So we can add that, okay?
Okay.
and Dale, you'll see the letter too before it goes out to the board.
Yeah, so you can make modifications to the letter.
Viren has his
Yes,
hand
I
up
just
again.
want to say this.
So
Fred, I
Jesse-
am abstaining, and I also would say instead of developer, should be a minority-owned developer, not just doing construction, because a lot of these things are just bid outs. So I just want to point that out. Thank you.
Okay.
So we have one abstaining, just for clarification.
So Jesse, how do they move?
Yeah, so I have two things. One thing, just going back to what David Solnick had raised and a couple other folks had raised, I just want to make sure whatever we do, we talk about the planning for sanitation and services to the buildings and all that. We do reference in our document the hard work that our planning fellow had done on this
Yes,
issue.
we'll do that.
I think we definitely need to make sure we reference that. So it's a little more complicated than I thought. Unfortunately, I've discovered we cannot do a breakout room directly from this room because it's in webinar and not meetings. I thought we could do it in webinar, not do it in meetings. And in addition, I can't create a separate Zoom space. So I'm going to use our backup, which I'm very glad we have, which is GoToMeeting. So I'm going to put it into the chat, and then I'm going to email all of the Clue members for that.
So let me be clear. So we should leave this meeting, then we should go to our email and you'll give us the Zoom link.
No, it's right there on the side.
It's in the
if you
chat.
go to the chat room, you can
chat.
click from your chat room.
Right now?
Yeah.
Guys, I have a question. I'm on both committees, so I've had to sort of.
Viren, you have to make a decision.
All right, so what I would also like to do for the public, if there are members of the public who are deciding whether to stay with transportation issues or go to this new session with Chelsea Land Use, Jesse, I'd like to just run over the headlines of what we'll be discussing at the land use meeting. So we're going to be talking about the community facilities. We're going to be talking about open space, shadows, historic and cultural resources, air quality, urban design, solid waste, energy, the alternative plans that we want to have them consider, and we're going to have a discussion on the funding sources that was just briefly touched on. that, so if anybody from the public wants to participate in that conversation, they should also move to GoToMeetings rather than staying with this transportation meeting.
Can I just
able to do that?
On the chat, in the chat box, if you open up the chat box.
No, I see it, but can the public open the chat box and get to that?
No, that chat was only sent to panelists. It needs to be sent to panelists and attendees from what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
I can't address that.
I'm working on it.
Okay.
So should we go now? We should go now.
Not just yet, because
No?
well, we can't, but Dale had a question.
I was just going to suggest to Viren, it may be possible for you to like attend one and follow along at least with chat if anything comes up with another, since we're in 2 different platforms. If that's feasible to you, I recognize it may not be practical, but.
No, I'm gonna try and do that. I thought we were gonna be on Zoom, so now I can because you have. So I'll try and do both and keep one of them apart.
Also, Paul and Betty, before I got cut off, I meant to say that the MBE should be considered for all areas, not just construction, development, construction, marketing, what have you.
Retail,
absolutely, like comprehensively.
Okay.
You know, they're usually pigeonholed into like the demolition crew on major construction projects in New York. So it would be better.
Okay, so we need to move on because we have the DOT waiting on us.
Sure.
Okay, so Betty,
Everybody
I'm kicking
should
you
be
out.
able to-
I'm going to go to this chat thing.
Right.
Yeah, that's what everybody should do.
Jesse, GoToMeeting says that I'm waiting for Jesse.
I'm here. Jeffrey's.
There we go. Okay, it's just starting in. Great. I'm here and I see Jeffrey now. Okay. I am leaving this meeting. Thank you, Christine and Dale, for indulging us in this joint meeting.
Oh, please. That was
Thank
a
you
pleasure.
Thank you for enriching our meeting.
Right,
And thank you to all our attendees, which were numerous. Okay, who is Betty is still stuck here.
I'm trying to, I said, I'm doing this go-to meeting.
Crashing again, I think.
Yeah.
But I didn't leave you enough? I didn't do enough leaving?
This is funny.
I'm trying here.
Brad, are you gone?
Oh, God.
Bert is not gone.
Am I still with, I'm still with you. I got to get out of here.
Yeah, but that's fine. We can
Betty,
just
go
talk
into
now.
your chat. Betty, go into your chat and you'll see it from there and it goes directly. It'll go, and when you
She's
press the
doing
button,
that.
it'll go
She has
direct.
done that.
I went to chat. I went to go to meeting. I have go-to meeting going on here.
Now you can go back to the Zoom and get out of it.
Oh, God.
You can leave this meeting.
I want to. I do.
At the bottom right, Betty.
Bottom right corner, there's a red leave button.
Betty, I can remove you if it's easier for you.
Don't remove me though, because I'm trying to go to chat as well, and it says when I go to meeting, tap to join session, it tells me I can't because the page and address isn't valid.
Oh,
so that's my problem.
Betty, are you seeing the same problem?
I'm trying. I have on my screen join by computer or phone, go to meeting, but so far I haven't gone to the meeting yet.
So go to the meeting.
I'm trying. I don't know what to do here.
Well, if you have two options
I would
by
suggest
computer.
leaving the Zoom meeting and checking your email.
Well, Janine,
because
All right. So I can remove you, Betty? Is that okay?
Yeah, do it. Do it.
Okay.
All right. Well, just so you know, the Gmail that Jesse sent was another Zoom meeting, not the go-to meeting that he said. So there's going to be some confusion there.
Okay. All right. So I'll send another email, I guess, with the same link.
Yeah. This is complicated. David, can we kick you out? I don't care. Okay, let me know, Janine, when you're ready to put up the DOT stuff.
So I didn't receive the DOT presentation. Kimberly or Colleen, is there a presentation you can email me real quick?
Yeah, I thought that both of us had actually done it separately. Let me double check.
I didn't receive it.
That's the kind of day it is. Everything we thought was going to happen didn't happen.
I'm glad we're on the same page.
Right. Okay.
Hey, Colleen, as long as you have, I just want to know if you received my email 2 days ago.
I'm trying to get out of this meeting and join the other one, and I've lost the ability to click on the go to
I think
meeting.
Janine sent you an email. Is that
Yes,
correct?
I'm sending the email right now.
Right.
Okay,
So
thank
you're going
you.
to get an email and you go click from there.
I'm going to leave this meeting now.
Yes.
Goodbye, folks.
Bye-bye.
Hey, David, I did get your email, sorry. And Janine, sorry, I did send the presentation. I don't know what happened.
Let me check my junk. I didn't see it
Yeah,
earlier.
I sent it after.
No, I don't see it anywhere.
Wow, that's real. Okay, I'll check my email tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Have you resent it now though?
Kim is sending it.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm trying from this computer. It's not easy.
Okay.
Sorry. Do we have Eileen and Olguin and Shawnez able to speak?
Let me bring them on. Eileen. Let me see here. So it's Eileen, and who's the other person?
Olguin, O-L-G-U-I-N-E.
Oh, I see.
Here it is. Here she is. Oh, and Ted is here.
Oh, don't let him speak though.
Yeah, no, we're not bringing him in.
So sorry about this.
Ted also. Oh, you just said Ted also. I think Ted wants to be moved in.
Most likely.
Did you move Ted?
Let me see.
He's all the way at the end.
Okay, I promoted him.
So
who do you need, Ted and?
So I think Eileen's gonna start the intro. I'm having challenges, but Eileen, if you want to just start talking for a minute, I'm sure they're familiar with some of the background, so it might not be.
But Janine, do you have the presentation or not?
Not yet.
And we're not able to share screen, is that right? Because I could display it that way.
Yeah, she can give it to you.
I mean, we're not really allowing it because of security purposes. Maybe you can add it to like a Dropbox or send it as a link. Maybe if the presentation is too large, it won't come through to my email. That could be the issue.
I think that might be the issue. That's why you didn't get it, Janine. It might be too large.
It is definitely a big presentation.
Yeah, so you have it on a shared file or not?
Right, as I mentioned, I'm able, if nothing else works, I'm happy to do the share screen, but I understand that that is not the protocol. Is it being resent or uploaded to a shared link?
It is being resent now that I've switched over to my other laptop. Okay.
We're having all the virtual meeting challenges today. All of them, all at once.
All of them.
It went again. If you want to see if it's there. It is 9 megabytes.
I haven't gotten it. I mean,
can you
if
send
there's
it
nowhere
to me? Kimberly, can you send it to me? I'll
Sure.
put it in the Dropbox.
Okay, just sent to Christine as well.
We'll see if it shows up. Let me see.
Oh, I got an email with it.
You got it?
Yeah, it just came through. Give me 1 second to put it up.
It's
and then-
big.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Okay, great.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Just a quick intro. I know you guys are expecting this presentation, but Eileen's gonna start, and then I think Ogween's gonna talk through the details of the presentation. Obviously, we're really excited to be here and be building on both the work that we've been doing over the past few years for Midtown Crosstown and on the temporary lanes we put in for COVID. So thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Switch to the next slide. So as Kim mentioned, we're going to cover some background on previous crosstown bike lanes and as well as new information on the additional proposal for 38th and 39th. I'll cover some of the background, and Olguin Alcide will cover the technical details and the design as well. Next. So this map shows our ongoing comprehensive plan for protected crosstown bike lanes that we've installed in Midtown since 2018. And for context on how they all fit together, it shows the recently installed lanes as well as the proposed routes, which are in purple. Starting in 2018, we installed the lanes on 12th, 13th, 26th, and 29th. And in last year installed the lanes on 52nd and 55th. And these lanes provide connections throughout the Midtown core, all the way from Union Square up to Central Park. Tonight's proposal will conclude the final pair in this series of crosstown protected lanes. The goals are to close gaps in the bicycle network, upgrade some of our existing bicycle infrastructure, and improve access to all these destinations in Midtown, including some transit hubs and greenways. Next. So we've found that the new lanes along the 50s and the 20s that we've already installed have resulted in an increase in cyclists using them, vehicle travel times not adversely affected, staying nearly the same. And additionally, some of the new curbside regulations we have installed, such as updating the meter, timing, and regulations, have been found to be effective and well used. Overall, the design for the protected bike lanes is something that we're able to replicate on other crosstown streets, but at the same time, it's quite flexible for accommodating unique land uses. Next. So following the implementation of last year's project, DOT's Street Ambassador team conducted education and outreach to cyclists along 52nd and 55th Streets, especially interacting with many delivery cyclists to educate them about the rules of the road and talk about the new infrastructure in place. Prior to installation of the project, during and also after, we conducted a number of walkthroughs and on-site meetings to better understand various issues and make adjustments as needed. Some examples of those include updating markings and signage to fine-tune the theater and hotel loading zone designs. We've also met with the horse stables on the west side here to ensure the design was working for them as well. And so we're continuing to evaluate feedback, make adjustments as needed. As you know, we've had some challenges with finishing up some of last year's markings work. Now that our crews are getting more fully operational, up and running again, and with alternate side regulations coming back online, we hope to get those completed very soon, as well as all the locations where there was ongoing construction, where it's wrapped up. We'll be returning there to finish that up as well. Next. So next I'll share some of the thinking that went into our route selection process and talk a bit about the existing conditions for this project area. Next. So this area of Midtown between 34th Street up to 42nd Street includes some really high volume destinations, of course, such as Times Square, Bryant Park, the Javits Center, and all the transit hubs from Port Authority to Grand Central and Penn Station. And when you look at these destinations overlaid on the bicycle map, there's not a lot of protected bike infrastructure that connects everything together. So it can be challenging to travel as a cyclist. You can see the dark green lines show protected lanes, and there are some conventional and shared lanes, but there's just really not a lot of infrastructure in this middle section of Midtown. Next. So in terms of typology of these streets, this area does have several differences from what we were working with in the 50s and the 20s. And some of those new considerations include wider roadways with multiple travel lanes on several sections. There's also many 10-foot travel lanes that are quite narrow for simultaneous travel when they include a shared bike lane. Overall, we feel the street could be better organized, and updated loading regulations could help to improve efficiency and turnover, especially for commercial loading. Finally, there's a lack of dedicated space for bikes in this part of the district, with many shared lanes, which are often blocked by vehicles. Both of these photos here on the right show cyclists traveling in the shared lanes on 39th, which on this street is quite challenging. It's not the most comfortable bike facility when you introduce all the congestion that exists in the area. Next. So during the route selection process, we took several factors into consideration. We wanted to share our process on this. We looked at continuity, so looking at uninterrupted crosstown streets. We looked at connectivity, connecting different pieces of the bike network together and deciding what to prioritize there. And also being mindful of the various street network challenges that exist, especially in regards to the tunnel access on both ends. So to maintain the half-mile distance between all these crosstown pairs, we found the section between 42nd to 34th Street to be the ideal area in which to include this next pair. And while there aren't streets in this specific area that do connect all the way from the Hudson River Greenway to the East River Greenway, we prioritized streets that did connect all the way from the Javits Center at 11th Avenue to the First Avenue bike lane, as that does link cyclists down into the East River Greenway on the east side. Next. So looking at eastbound streets, starting at the south, 36th Street overlaps with some of the main entrance and exit points to the Midtown Tunnel on the east side. Further south than that, it's a little too close to the 29th Street and 26th Street pair. Farther north, 40th Street has some challenges, such as the Lincoln Tunnel entrance, the major Port Authority exit, 41st Street switches directions and is also discontinuous at Bryant Park. And then that aerial image at the bottom, if you could see that, it shows some of those challenges that are not ideal along 40th when you travel east of 11th Avenue. Next. In the westbound direction, both 35th and 37th Street have some two-way segments on the east side. 37th Street also overlaps with those main entry and exit points to the Midtown Tunnel, which is also displayed in that aerial image at the bottom. So these conditions create significant challenges for accommodating the design we're looking at, and they're just not ideal. When drivers are exiting the Midtown Tunnel, signs direct them to use 37th Street for crosstown access. And 39th Street in comparison does have the advantage of continuity and connectivity from the First Avenue bike lane to 11th Avenue without having those directional changes and some of those complexities of the tunnel access points. Next. And then lastly, something else that we did consider was lane widths, which some of our lane width criteria for the street width itself changes depending on our proposed design, even throughout this project. But we do have a very specific design in the Midtown core between 8th and 9th Avenues to Madison that required a minimum of 36 feet. So these dark green boxes on the map show where that design can fit. So in this eastbound direction, 38th Street had the clear advantage over the other eastbound streets in terms of giving us enough space to plan our ideal design. Next. In the westbound direction, 39th Street also had that minimum width criteria all the way through this core section, more so than the other streets. And so next I will hand off the presentation to Olguin Alcide, who will cover the technical side of things.
Hello, just to quickly introduce myself again. My name is Olguin Alcide. I worked with Eileen on this project and the analysis as the engineer. I'll be covering the details of our design. You can just move on to the next slide. So the previous crosstown protected bike lanes featured two designs, which are shown here. The delineator protected with curbside buffered bike lanes, and the parking protected bike lanes. Our proposal for 38th and 39th will use similar treatments, but incorporate rush hour lanes to accommodate the higher vehicle volumes that we see during the peak traffic conditions. Next slide. 38th and 39th can be broken down by 3 distinct neighborhoods with different characteristics. On the east side within CB6, the blocks are regular and have multiple travel lanes and rush hour lanes. In the commercial core within CB5, which is just west of Madison, the blocks typically have 2 travel and 2 parking lanes and is most consistent. And lastly, west of that, what we'll be focusing on tonight, CB4 has the Lincoln Tunnel access and mostly 1 travel lane with 2 parking lanes. Next slide. On a separate but related note, in response to COVID and the need to develop transportation options as the city reopens, we've been installing temporary bicycle routes throughout the city. Earlier in the spring, we began the installation of barrels and signage to provide space for cyclists on 38th and 39th Street. And prior to installation, 38th and 39th both had 2 travel lanes and 2 parking lanes between 8th and Madison, with the street width varying considerably in CB4. As part of the temporary design, we shifted the parking lane that you see there into the second moving lane to provide the curbside space for the temporary bike lane. Again, this design does differ a bit in CB4 from what's shown here. And generally, we've been monitoring the lanes daily with some of our staff going out to shift barrels back into place, hang additional signage, and really speak to business owners and drivers at those locations. And just as a note, we've reached the halfway point of the presentation. And for the next couple of slides, I'll be discussing the design by block. Next slide. Between 8th Avenue and Madison, which is mostly in that CB5 portion, the proposed design for 38th and 39th is similar to what we've seen on previous crosstowns, in that it provides a parking protected bike path along both corridor. However, one thing that really distinguishes it from those previous crosstowns is that these designs include rush hour lanes opposite the proposed bike lane. And this design is flexible in that it provides a dedicated space for cyclists, but it still allows for 2 lanes of traffic for the high vehicle volumes that we see during the peak conditions. And this still maintains overnight and off-peak parking. The curbside lane is also a far more comfortable condition for cyclists who are used to using the existing shared routes along this route. And this treatment is most consistently seen within the limits between 8th Avenue and Madison, but we'll also see this design in CB4. Next slide. Starting at 9th Avenue and heading west to 8th Avenue on 39th Street, the existing markings at this location include a standard bike lane, 2 parking lanes, and a travel lane. Our proposed design would standardize the width of the parking lanes to provide a curbside parking protected bike lane along the south curb. And this design would also include some parking lots for turn treatments and drop-offs. Next slide. Further west, between 9th and 10th, the existing bike lane drops away. And so similar to the last block, we have 2 parking lanes and 1 travel lane. And so we would again standardize the lane widths to provide the curbside bike lane. And additionally, there's a number of, buses at this location, as you can see in some of these images. And so to provide better visibility between bikes and some of those vehicles, we would consolidate some of the bus layover at this location for consistency and remove some of the parking spaces along the bike path. Next slide. The last block of 39th Street is again very similar to the previous blocks in that the design would really standardize the existing parking and vehicle lanes to provide that curbside parking protected bike lane. And on the areas of the block where the street width widens quite considerably, we would maintain the existing channelization and the pedestrian space at 10th Avenue. And we would also remove some spaces for better visibility at driveways where those vehicles are interacting with cyclists. Next slide. So moving on to 38th Street, now in the eastbound direction, the blocks between 11th Avenue and 10th Avenue are currently marked to include a parking lane, two 10-foot travel lanes, and no standing along the north curb. As part of our proposal, we would provide the curbside bike lane in that space and update the travel lanes to a rush hour lane along the north curb. So this would maintain the existing hotel loading zones at this location and overnight parking and off-peak parking. Next slide. It's quite a lot, but between 10th and 9th Avenue, similar to the previous block, there's existing parking lane, two travel lanes, and no standing along the north curb. On this block, our design would bring the number of travel lanes down to 1, provide parking on both sides of the street with a curbside bike lane. This design really accommodates the FDNY turns that we expect here and some of that activity with some parking loss at the driveways for better visibility. Next slide. So lastly, between 9th and 8th Avenue, the existing conditions involve 2 travel lanes and 2 parking lanes. So in our proposed design, we would provide the curbside parking protected bike lane, 1 full-time travel lane, and the rush hour lane along the opposite curb. This is similar to what we saw on those eastern blocks on MCB4, and this would maintain off-peak and overnight parking and include the removal of parking spaces along the north curb at driveways and intersection treatments. Next slide. So on another separate but related note, 38th and 39th Street are both discontinuous at 11th Avenue, which Eileen identified. And so to provide a connection from the proposed lanes to the Hudson River Greenway, we would look to 40th Street. Between 11th and 12th Avenue, the street is currently 2-way with some ongoing construction for the Chavez Center. And so our proposed design would match the existing conditions, but would provide a 2-way bike path with jersey barriers. And this would be done by shifting some of that existing alignment, but still accommodating some of the turns from the existing bus depot along the north curb. So due to the ongoing construction, this is something that we would install separately in the future, and it's contingent, as it's really contingent on the ongoing construction here. Next slide. And so to get to that connection between on 40th Street, we would direct the cyclist to bike slams on the west side of 11th Avenue. This would simplify the transition to 40th Street, and it also avoids the conflict at the Lincoln Tunnel entrance crossing the east side of the street. And so we would hope to improve this connection in the future, but we would install this as an interim treatment to provide a short-term connection with the sidewalk stamps and appropriate wayfinding signage. Next slide. So next, we'll touch on some of the details for making this design work with the conditions in Midtown. And we're really coming up on 5 more slides here, so bear with me. Next slide. On past crosstown projects, we've successfully employed curb management strategies to accommodate the many different land uses that we sometimes see in Midtown. This included updating the parking regulations to increase turnover and discourage the double parking that we usually see in Midtown. And so we also maintain emergency access on some of the narrower conditions with our no standing zones. And these really function as a release valve for traffic by really giving people a place to pull over in critical conditions. And part of our curb management also involved working with hotels, businesses, and theaters to really accommodate their pickup and drop-off areas with dedicated loading zones. Next slide. So there's a number of design elements that we also employ in our design. And so these all work to improve the efficiency of vehicle flow at intersections, but also help with safety surrounding cyclists and pedestrians. This can include split phases, which are a signal timing tool that provides separate signal phases for vehicles, cyclists, and pedestrians. And this improves safety by mitigating the conflict at the intersection wherever it's feasible. And at the intersections with lower turn volumes, we would install offset crossings, which improves sight lines at the intersections and calms vehicles turning across pedestrians and cyclists. Lastly, new right turn bays at select locations increase the vehicle capacity and pull turning vehicles away from the path of through traffic and really alleviates back pressure that can cause people to make quick turns across the bike path and pedestrians. And so this all works to really further improve safety for pedestrians and cyclists, but also improves vehicular efficiency along the corridor. Next slide. And again, to touch on the previously mentioned design benefits of offset crossings and some of those other signal turn treatments. So they all quickly improve cyclist safety by separating cyclists from through traffic and providing turning vehicles with the use of their own signal phase. And the use of quick curb and some of those offset crossings also helps to offset some of those turns. And we also employ LPIs and split phases at those intersections. And pedestrian safety all generally benefits from this design by simplifying some of those vehicular movements. Next slide. So just to touch on next steps, you can go on to. So tonight we discussed the segments of 38th and 39th, which fall within CB4. However, we wanted to briefly touch on the typical design for some of the eastern portions of our proposal. In CB5, where we mentioned before, where the densest commercial activity occurs and the street width is a little bit more generous and more consistent, the design is more typical with parking protected bike lanes and the rush hour lanes, which maintain 2 travel lanes during the peak conditions. And the design varies the most in CB6 with some delineator protected block, curbside, and parking protected blocks, similar to 26 and 29th. And again, in CB4, it would mostly be parking protected bike lanes. Next slide. Lastly, in terms of next steps, given approval, we would like to move forward on this as soon as this summer or early fall with installing these lanes really permanently to meet the demand that we've seen in some of those temporary conditions. And we recently received the support from CB5 and 6 on this project, and we're excited to work with CB4 on this design. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. Lots of questions.
Thank you.
Is there a way you can go back to those segments which are in our neighborhood and we can really ask questions one by one?
Yes. You could just go back to those slides, I guess.
Okay. All right, just talk about the temporary barrel route. I don't know who is inspecting, but I live on 38th Street. I can tell you that that bike lane doesn't exist and the barrels are not there. So if you have paid somebody to go and visit there, you can fire that guy because they never went and they never did anything. So this interim bike lane was just completely a joke. Okay, so let me ask 1 or 2 questions, then we open to everybody. 39, 8 to 9. So 4 feet, 3 buffer, travel lane, parking lane. All right, so, and I think I'm going to ask that question multiple times, but in this neighborhood where there are so many deliveries, and sometimes they are not it's not parking, right? You mean loading, right? There's no parking in those streets.
This is generally loaded, commercial loading.
Okay, and is it parking at night or not?
There should be some overnight parking in some of those commercial regs.
Right, I think it would be good to make everything loading. There's no need for having parking. So, I mean, it's not going to work if we don't have a really hard vertical delineator there. The commercial activity is really intense, and sometimes there are not people parked there. So we really, I mean, if we want to call that a protected lane, we want the same finish than the 8th Avenue lane, which has a delineator to go through. So I think that works. The parking lane, travel lane, parking lane. Okay. One point also on 8th Avenue, on the other side of 8th Avenue, is it becoming a 1 lane or not?
This is 39th or 38th?
39, where we are now.
Sure. Right, so this section is 1 travel lane. So there is a transition from the previous block where they drop a lane into a turn lane onto 8th Avenue.
And we have been asking repeatedly to change the signal timing so that we don't have 2 cars trying to fit in there. There should be a conversion on the other side. There should be a narrowing on the other side.
Well, something
so that the merge from 2 to 1 happen on the east side of 8th Avenue.
Yes.
And when they are coming on the other side, they are, they are already 1 lane.
I think they're saying that it's a left turn lane, so that there'll be only 1 through lane on the east side, and then as it goes across.
Yes. Yes. Right. Okay. So, anybody has any question? The committee, do you have any question about that segment?
About that segment, or
just that segment? Okay. All right. I'll go next. Let me see on chat. We have anything? Okay, then next page is 10 to 11, right?
9 to 10.
9 to 10.
I guess you're going to go.
This is just heading.
Oh, this is 9 to 10. We didn't do 8 to 9. I'm sorry.
No, so the previous one was 8
Can I ask a technical question on the width of the parking lane and the seeming just willingness to change it from 12 to 9 to 11 feet? And is there some kind of a standard behind that or logic?
Yeah, so really for the 11-foot travel lane, that would be our standard width for a travel lane. And so we're taking some of that space to allocate to the bike path. But for the 9-foot parking lane, with Christine mentioned before is true, there is a number of commercial uses here. And so just to make sure that they have some extra spaces for their loading, we provided 9-foot parking lanes just to give excess space.
Right.
Okay. And the comment,
sorry.
Yeah, and the comment I just made was really related to east of 8th Avenue coming to west of 8th Avenue, right? That was the comment I made.
Yes.
Okay. So we're good on that, right? 4 feet is not very big, but I guess if they have the buffer, that's fine. And same thing, we need to have that separation. 9 to 10 is where there is a big space. Oh, this is 9 to 10, right? So you have the buses there. Right.
Yeah, so we would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to add to what Ogween mentioned, giving the 9-foot parking lane actually provides a better chance that those vehicles will stay in the lane, and then that buffer will be even more clear than what we've seen on some other projects where sometimes vehicles can encroach on that buffer a little bit. So this ensures that they will stay in the parking lane.
Okay, and between 9 and 10 also, the sidewalk is incredibly small, shrunk. So it is very, very important that we make sure that the, the buffer is respected, and there is no space to go. This is one of the ramps. Okay, next, going to the west.
Wait, I'm sorry, Christine. I
Yes.
think Martin raised a question about this block in the chat about, Ogween, if you could just go over how the layover buses are moved from current to proposed as a mitigation for like making sure that cyclists and buses don't have conflicts in terms of sightlines. I think Martin just wanted to hear it again. I think it's kind of important.
Yeah, so really what we did here is we consolidated some of that bus layover footage into like one area so it would be more consistent. And also we provided those 9-foot parking lanes just to make sure that they have really extra space since they're a bit larger.
But when you say consolidated, where is it consolidated?
It's still on the same block. They're just shifted.
But where?
So this is mostly
you have no idea. You have no idea how
side of
much
the
we
block.
know about those.
This is mostly on the west side of the block. And to add to what Alina already detailed, she mentioned that there's some daylighting at the driveways so that there's more visibility between the buses and the bikes. And also we're working with our bus stop management team to keep most of the buses on one side of the street so it's more predictable. And we'll take this feedback back to them as well. On the east side of the block.
One thing is that on the east side, at the entrance of the east side, in front of the business, there is a marked stop, and we want to remove that because it's in front of the business, and it was never put. It was kind of an illegal bus stop.
On the north side or the?
Yeah, the northeast. I'm sorry, the northwest corner of 9 and 39. There is a restaurant there, and there shouldn't be any bus in front of it.
Okay, we'll take that back. And I think we're looking at the west side of the block for the buses, so we'll make sure.
All right. So next one.
So the general idea is. I'm sorry. Can I just
go ahead?
So the general idea is to aggregate the buses and restrict them in a parking area so that in some way they can act like a bit of a buffer for the cyclists without being less of a visual obstruction. That's the presiding logic.
Right, and we've added some extra daylighting at those driveways just to make sure there's even more visibility between any of the buses turning into those or turning out of the driveways.
Okay.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted to fully understand the proposal. Okay, next block.
So that's the next block, which has this huge buffer. So how is that working?
So generally, we wouldn't be making considerable changes to that buffer. I believe we cut a little bit into it to provide some more space for the bike path, but generally that would be maintained in addition to the ped space that's already existing at 10th Avenue.
But are you saying that the bike path is on the south side of 39?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to have a major problem here because right there is like a massive towing operation.
Right,
I think on that block, you should really put it on the north side. These people are never going to respect the after DHL. First there is DHL, but then behind that, which you can see, is the major towing operation. They have cars everywhere.
Yeah, one of the challenges here with the north side is that exit point from the tunnel there, which is
but it's not used. Has never been used.
Right, but also I think what Alwyn was saying is that there's some extra space, so we're widening the parking lane at certain sections to make sure there's enough space for those vehicles at DHL and the towing and the auto shops to really stay in their own lane. We're also happy to meet with them and ensure that this is something that they will follow.
I mean, you're dreaming here. These people have lived on the far west side for all their life, and they chose that space because they can do whatever they want. So the reality of it, and we have been dealing with them for a long time, is you cannot, I mean, putting the bikes on that south lane on this block is very, very, I mean, it's not going to happen. They are going to arrive at the towing, and there are going to be cars all over the place, and they are going to have to be in the traffic, which when in the evening, the traffic is very intense here. And really, I mean, that's just like saying, okay, we're not doing that block. This is my input. I really think that this is an issue here.
We don't switch the bike lanes to and from each side because that generally leads towards confusion and can be unsafe to get cyclists to do that.
I know, Ted. I've heard you say that before. I'm just raising that as a major issue, but you know.
I hear you, but we also have to, you know, like there's other uses in the city, and I definitely understand when we have the challenges as well. But I don't think, you know, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, and we have to try to work with these guys and make it so they're not taking over the street, you know? right?
And they would basically be
Putting lines down and putting regs down might help that.
Mhm. Right. They would be shifted off the curb basically to where that truck is that's kind of double parked there. They'll be shifted off.
Yeah.
That buffer on the north side will reduce. So everything will
okay.
shift over a bit. It's just
that helps.
Yeah, at the very eastern end, that existing neck down would stay, but everything will shift over a bit. And if it's helpful, we could share, whether it's a site plan or more detail to talk through this. But as Ted said, it is really confusing to switch mid-intersection. And we've
No, I know, but I just that helps. We'll see if it works.
It's 8
okay,
o'clock.
so the
Yeah, we've gone through this in other locations on these corridors too, where we have
Okay.
challenges and we meet with people and we, make adjustments and changes to try to get it to work. And over time, I think it does get better.
Can I just ask a fundamental question about, Christine, is that okay?
Yeah.
About, DOT's approach and design. This will be the third set of protected bike lanes in the central business district. I can speak to several specific issues that we deal with on 55th and 52nd Street, and likewise on 29th Street. Why is there such a resistance to actually protecting these bike lanes and instead, continuing to prioritize the vehicle instead of actually making safe space for cyclists by protecting this part of the road they use with actual, whether it's Jersey barriers or bollards or something that doesn't allow for, whether it be a DHL truck, somebody in their SUV from New Jersey, or anybody to drive into that bike lane.
So if I can jump in, some of the challenges that you're speaking to are also related to the need to still provide a lot of commercial loading throughout all of these lanes on the CBD. And so one of the challenges with something that has a lot of height, like a Jersey barrier, is if someone's parked, they're dropping somebody off or they're unloading packages, it's very challenging to cross over that type of material. We are exploring new materials and taking this into consideration. And another piece that we do have to take into account for these types of designs is the width of what our sweepers and plows with sanitation department are able to clear. And so I know it does look like we are keeping a lot of parking. A lot of this really is commercial loading. And the reality is if we were to remove that, it is more likely that some of the bike lanes could end up being blocked fully. And so here we're giving them a space in order to do the loading and unloading. In CB5, where there is a bit more traffic, we're even converting some of that to that rush hour lane. So I hear the concern.
But I guess, I think of the Greenway, which is not in the city's purview, and I understand that. But, when a truck decided to make a terrorist attack on the Greenway, the first thing the state did and the NYPD did was drop a bunch of sugar cubes, which protects cyclists, but it also seriously endangers them by narrowing the space they have to get through those intersections. And, nobody did it with consulting the cyclists.
So what's Jeffrey, what is the recommendation, your recommendation?
That there needs to be protection.
Vertical protection, which is not just the cars.
Correct.
So what we'd like to have is the kind of separation we have on 8th Avenue, and maybe not as dense, but at least,
sorry.
Because just the cars, at some times of the day, there are no cars there. There are not going to be any protection.
I think, honestly, I totally hear what you're saying. When the car, go talk to mama. I'll be on in a second. Give me.
They always know right when you want to talk.
Basically the point I'm making is it's really difficult to do this. It's a problem when there are not vehicles parked. I totally understand that. It's really annoying with delivery trucks who oftentimes don't care and pull right into the buffer, not really paying attention to it. I will say, I've been watching these things very closely on all of these cross streets. It's getting slightly better and people are respecting it a little bit better. Now that's the public side. I would say on like our side, internally at DOT, we are looking at ways that we can protect these things better. Right now, cars like on other parts of 8th Avenue, I don't think this is the part of 8th Avenue you were referring to, Christine.
No.
We do use cars very well to protect the bike lanes. So it's something that we actually considered here, just putting flexible delineators and removing some of the parking in certain places. But we really feel like people weren't going to respect that. And so we kind of have to balance this. I will say also that we'll continue to monitor it. And you guys, your point is absolutely right. I wish we could protect everything, but the city still has to work through a lot of these things.
No, the city's chosen to prioritize vehicles over cyclists and people. And it continues to be apparent 3 phases into the development of bike lanes in Manhattan. So.
Okay, so let's move to the next 38th Street or 12. Where are we now? We are at 11th Avenue, right?
11.
Oh, you want to do 38 first? Okay, 38, 11 to, oops, where am I? 38, 11 to, so it's going to be on the north sidewalk, great. Why do I have a rush hour lane? Am I 11 to 10? Nobody is on that street 11 to 10.
This is an interesting block where that really sort of refers to those existing regulations where it's no standing for those very odd hours that you see at the north side. We're taking a close look at this with our parking unit, but it really would function actually more like a standard parking lane.
But nobody's parking either. Why don't you make a big, fat bike lane?
Yeah, we could definitely take that into account. We'll take a closer
Why
look.
don't you give us a big, fat bike lane here because there is nobody there. There is no one there. This is just, you know, you can take all the space you want.
Yeah, we'll
make it
definitely look
one
at that.
lane, one travel lane. We don't need a parking lane there. There's nothing. Okay, next one. 10 to 9. Same story here.
Yeah, this one is, it's a little challenging. There is that FDNY house on the south
I know,
side.
but I mean, this portion is going to be marked no something, right? They've already put there, right? So before and after, why don't you make it like a big fat lane?
Mm-hmm. Right, well, we could take a closer look at the regulations here. This could be one of those spots where for certain sections, we can add some vertical elements. So we'll take a closer look.
There is absolutely no, yeah.
Some of those FDNY authorized vehicles have to park there. So at certain times of the day, it is occupied. But
to just
no, they don't have to, they are not authorized to park on the street. Oh, they're authorized to
If you guys are requesting us removing parking regs, I think that should absolutely be in the resolution.
Yeah. We should have this whole space should have no parking. The FDNY has a parking inside a building or whatever it is. And then here we can move, you know, whatever outside of that. Okay.
Point of information, the firefighters are guaranteed, unfortunately, they're guaranteed parking by their union contract as well as the cops in different locations.
But they have a parking. They have a parking lot. There is a parking lot there.
Okay,
Yes.
if that's officially sanctioned for them, then I stand corrected then, okay.
All right. Next.
Just a quick question. Are you guys saying that you prefer delineator protected lanes to parking protected lanes?
I would say yes, in this neighborhood, yes.
Okay. Just cars tend to have like a more consistent area than the delineators at the spacing that we usually implement them.
Right.
What about armadillos?
Well, they can figure, but we'll say that in the resolution. 38 between 9 and 8. So you're going to have some, and the same thing. I mean, rush hour. The only time you have rush hour is in the morning, and it's no rush. I mean, you know, it's just cars are using that street instead of using in the afternoon. There is nobody on that street. After 11 o'clock, there is no one. So I don't think you need a rush hour lane. You need possibly a loading lane on both sides, but not a rush hour lane.
Well, we could take a closer look at that suggestion. there are options for updating some of the hours of the rush hour lane as needed, depending on specific issues. So we'll see if this is one of those unique scenarios that we could.
Well, I can tell you that definitely on the south side, there are a lot of businesses, and especially in front of my building, there is a huge business which needs loading all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. So that's not going to fly with them. They're going to say, you are just completely messing up my business. And there are other businesses along that line.
Right.
So there is a fair amount of delivery here on the south side. And there's not much travel at this point. Okay, so now 11th Avenue. I couldn't figure what you were doing on 11th Avenue.
That next slide.
I think if you click to 2 slides.
Yeah, so where is what?
Yeah, so as you can see, where we have 39th and 38th Street, what we'll be doing is directing cyclists to the 11th Avenue sidewalk on the west side there to make sure that they're avoiding some of that Lincoln Tunnel exit entrance.
Wait a minute, are you directing them to ride on the sidewalk?
Yes, this would be.
Oh, no.
Isn't that illegal? Like literally illegal, if I'm not mistaken?
So when we installed bicycle sidewalk stamps and signage, it does permit cyclists to use it. As we mentioned earlier, this is an interim connection at a lower
volume. The west sidewalk is completely occupied by people going to the Javits Center. Just because now there is no one, this is teeming with people. No, I think you should do, on the west sidewalk, why don't you make them a lane there and move everybody to the other side? We have 3 lanes of travel and it's way too much. We never use those 3 lanes of travel. This is half empty all the time. Take 1 lane and move it over.
Can you also just explain what is meant by stamps? Bicycle stamps, sidewalk
bike stamps are what make it legal on a bike,
right,
on a sidewalk, so people can use it. It is a wider sidewalk there. That's why we were thinking that. I am in agreement. It's always the last resort to put something on a sidewalk. However, we would have to remove that bus lane. We would have to remove probably.
No, you don't remove the bus lane. You remove 1 traffic lane, you move the bus lane out.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry,
Christine,
yes.
Can I just follow through with my thinking before you jump in?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, so how are the stamps, how is that delineated? Like I've never seen a sidewalk bicycle lane. So how is that physically delineated?
There's no image of it, but generally it's a symbol that indicates the directions of travel, and it just has a bike in the center of it, and they're spaced a certain number of feet so that people can see them clearly.
And
there's some in
a little section
in Battery Park. Yeah. There's one behind City Hall. There's various places there in Brooklyn as you come off the Brooklyn Bridge, where there's shared places.
So it's signage, but it's not like a green sidewalk. It's signage indicating.
If you actually look at this, it's very small, but right next to where it says west sidewalk in the proposed, it's in
right.
And it looks like
it's a standstill. It's a standstill on the ground. That's what it is.
I see. Okay, that right. Image underneath the cyclist is a stencil. Okay.
Right.
Thanks.
Right.
Go ahead, Christine.
Right. So this is something that I don't think we can live with, but this is, we need to have, you do your protected lane here. We have the 11th Avenue protected lane above. So you take it from 40th or 42nd and you bring it here and you move and you lose 1 travel lane. We don't need those 3 travel lanes. They are not, if you measure the volume, it's not there.
Yeah.
All right, we'll look into it.
Yeah. And then
I don't know, Olguin, if you have those actual numbers.
Just
Sorry
gonna
for
stress
cutting you
that
off.
this is really meant as like an interim treatment to provide that connection. And
no. We don't do interim on the sidewalk. No, we have to do the other thing. 40th Street So you're going to mark it some way or not?
Are you speaking on 40th Street?
Yes.
So for that proposal, we would be doing, we'd be proposing a two-way bike path, and that would be Jersey barrier protected on the south curb of 40th Street.
If you could go to
So you would put a Jersey barrier there. Okay, but when is that going to go? Because you were saying there is construction.
Right, so if you could flip to the previous slide, 27, and we can show. So
yeah,
as she mentioned, this is something that would probably have to come slightly after the installation of the 38th and 39th piece. So
why? There is nobody on that street ever.
So the current construction, and it's two-way.
Yeah, but there is nobody. Look at all the space you have, and there is nobody on that street ever.
So because it's two-way, and there's only about 11 feet in each direction with the construction in place, it's very challenging. We can look at an interim option as say.
So don't make it two ways. Remove one way.
Mm-hmm. Right. One challenge here, just to note, is that the bus depot on the north curb,
yeah,
to 11th Avenue, does have buses accessing in both directions, because we have spoken to MTA about some of their access needs when looking at this block. So the one-way conversion is something that could be very challenging based on the MTA's needs for accessing the depot. We could definitely take this into consideration and see what the options are, but that's part of why the construction is really a challenge here with its current space that it takes up in the roadway. But we can.
So my question is, how is it going to look in the interim?
Mm-hmm. So this is something that we would probably wait to install until the construction is wrapped up, but we can also consider, we can review if there are interim options available in the way that we would typically try to accommodate the lanes during construction. So we'll look into that.
Okay.
It is a challenge, but we'll see if there's anything possible here.
Right. Okay. So
on that, just because it's on this topic, why is the bike lane two-way on, even though the whole rest? Because it's for both. Never mind.
Yeah.
Both
yeah.
36th and 38th, and
yeah, it's going to feed both of them, right?
I doubt that people from 36th are going to come all the way up to 40th to do this, but
38
and 36th, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
no.
38th, 39th, right? So they have to come up.
Yeah. It's one block. It's two blocks. It's not.
Well, they don't have the option to go straight through the Javits Center.
No, I understand that. I understand that.
Right. Okay. So the committee members, we have a whole slew of Q&A. I'm overwhelmed here. So David, you just made your comment.
No,
should
that wasn't my comment. No.
Okay, so you raise your hand. What is it about?
Well, it's sort of a general question. So you got 4-foot wide bike lanes. Are those also for 25 mile per hour electric bikes?
Mm-hmm. So are you asking about the e-bikes?
Yeah, so is it expected that on a 4-foot wide bike lane that the electric bikes with a speed limit of 25 miles per hour will be on that 4-foot wide bike lane?
Yes, if that is allowed by law. I can't keep track of all the e-bike things flying by. The last thing I heard was it wasn't that high, but yes, they would be able to use that.
When you say it wasn't that high, you mean the speed limit?
Yeah, but I don't
thought that they were
remember.
reduced to 50 miles an hour, even though they could do 25.
Oh, really? Okay.
There was something
they've tried
in one of the letters that was sent out. It stated that, at least in the city.
Yeah, but that's different from what was approved. So David, what's your point there? What's the point you want to make?
Well, I mean, I think it's obvious what my point is, that if there's, if there's bicycles going 25 miles an hour, in the same lane where unmotorized vehicles are going 7 or 8, which is pretty typical. I mean, I realize this is a little bit aside, but if it was suggested, if somebody suggested that they're going to put they're going to allow a new kind of vehicle in the vehicle lanes that goes 50 miles an hour, double what the cars are going. Imagine what the reaction to that would be, okay? But yet this new thing is proposing that electric bikes, which go 2 or 2.5 or 3 times what conventional bikes go, are in the same lanes, right? So it's okay to do it for bikes. But it would never be accepted for cars.
Okay, but so David, what is your point? Your point is that you don't want them to be in the car, or you want the lanes to be 5 feet or 6 feet?
No, my point is that the electric bike should be in the vehicle lanes, not in the bike lanes.
Okay, so let's put it down. I'll get that down. All right.
Can I add, though, that they should in fact be widened, because we should be considering cargo bikes. We should be encouraging a more greener and flexible use for movement of goods, especially in the central business district.
Yes. Okay, so I want to go to the participants, the attendees. This is the part where the attendees can raise their hand. In there, if you go under participants, you have an option to raise your hand. And if you have a question, please raise your hands. Otherwise, we're just going to go, oh, here are 2 hands. Jonathan Hawkins, unmute yourself.
Hey, everybody. Jonathan Hawkins from the Garment District. Thank you guys for the presentation. It was great. We're excited to have these. Anything that improves safety in the neighborhood is good, and this will definitely improve safety for cyclists. Most of the things that I would have talked about, I think, were already covered. The only thing I wanted to go back to is the rush hour moving lane that's adjacent to the sidewalk. The sidewalks are pretty narrow in the neighborhood. I know that block is not as busy as the ones to the east, but it makes me really nervous, the thought of cars moving that close to pedestrians, given how narrow the sidewalk is. So I was wondering if you could maybe, I don't know, talk about that a little bit. And I mean, but also I think that there'll probably be at least 1 car at all times that's standing or parking illegally, so it won't function as a lane anyway. So that was my only concern was about that, the rush hour lane next to the sidewalk. I mean, do you think that there could be more pedestrian car conflict from that? Thank you.
I could speak to that. Some of the, you may remember some of the clear lanes and clear curbs initiatives in other parts of Midtown that introduced some moving lanes adjacent to the curb. There also are some that have been around for quite a while on some other blocks. I do understand the concern about this particular block. Is it 8th to 9th that you're speaking of? And we'll, as Christine mentioned earlier, we'll take a closer look at the loading there. But generally, there are already many moving lanes adjacent to the curb. What we have done is actually provided more width for the curbside travel lane. So that's 11 feet, whereas the lane next to it between the 2 is 10. And that's intended to make sure there's still enough space for vehicles that are passing, that it doesn't interfere with the sidewalk.
And just to even add to that, at some of the locations where the street width is a little bit wider, we've also widened the rush hour lane, knowing that it's close to the curb.
We don't want to widen the rush hour lane.
So the
wider the lane, the faster they want to go. We need to keep those lanes as tight as possible, and then create neck down for the pedestrians.
One other piece to mention about part of why we chose to keep the full-time parking on the bike lane side is it does allow us to keep that pedestrian refuge area in place full-time, whereas if it's on the other side, then we can't have either the offset crossings or some of those islands that could fit in. So that's another thing that we took into account, that is a benefit of switching those sides.
Okay.
But yeah, we wouldn't be widening them exceptionally. I think the 11 foot is something, as I mentioned, it makes sure that there's enough space that they're not passing people directly on the sidewalk very closely. The 10 foot adjacent to the curb would be quite narrow. And so we're hoping that this is the more ideal condition, and we'll take a look at that 8th to 9th block.
I have somebody with a raised hand, of which the phone number is end by 944. So you are next.
Hi, this is Laszlo Reichard. I'm a resident of the neighborhood. And I just have a question, basically. But first, let me thank you guys. You did a terrific job of presentation. And thank you, Christine, for, I agree with many of your objections. But my question is, at nighttime, when you're allowed parking after 7 p.m. on both sides, let's say between, on 38th Street between 9th and 8th Avenue,
right.
Which basically allows for one lane for traffic to go through. So after 7 p.m., I know, Christine, you're aware of this as well, is that there is a lot of garbage pickup,
right?
Basically around midnight to about 2 in the morning. How does that work? Because, you know, as well as I do that, the parking at nighttime is packed. You know, once 7 o'clock rolls around, everybody from New Jersey and the boroughs, this is where they park.
That's a good point, but that's why I was saying earlier that we should change the regulation at night on all those streets and leave it and make it loading and unloading, because that supports another project of ours, which is to really try to put the garbage in the lane, in the loading lane, you know. And if you don't have the parking, then you can put the garbage, and then it gives you more room for pedestrians. So we would rather on all those streets make it like loading and unloading for the whole day and night.
Yeah, it would make more sense, because otherwise, I can imagine, you know, somebody getting stuck behind a garbage truck that has to pick up 20 dumpsters from in front of the catering hall. You know, that's a nightmare, especially 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right. Who else wants to speak? Oh, panelists. Somebody has a raise. David, did you cover that, or you have a new item? David?
No, I don't have another item.
Oh, okay. All right. So your hand was up. So I don't have anybody speaking anymore. Do you have somebody else wants to speak?
So there's no raised hands, but there's a few questions in the Q&A section.
Oh, where is it? Can you read them?
Sure. So Inga asked, can we request a bike lane for 23rd Street? And she agrees with the 9th Avenue protections for bike lanes needed.
Right, but that was in the last meeting, right?
Was it 7:30?
I mean, that does, 7:30, okay. For 23rd Street, yeah, I mean, but that's a different discussion. I mean, I think, I don't know that, I think we should have we should notify people and invite people before we make that decision. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay, another question is, have you thought about adding planters or pedestrian plazas or street seats instead of 2 parking lanes?
Is this for the duration of the generally project overall with the project, or is the question on certain locations?
Well, let's say we have many of those locations. Everything west of 9th Avenue is covered by a bid. The question is whether the bid could, you know, if this was the case, some of those protection that we've been talking about for the bike lane could be planters and then maintained by the bid.
Absolutement.
Okay, we'll ask.
Right, of course. There was a comment, there's somebody said the silence, there was a little bit of confusion. I just want them to understand that that's something we're very much in favor of. Makes it easier with a bid.
Okay, cool. What else, Janine?
Let me see. Okay, so could you please include street seats and free public covered bicycle parking in place of parked cars?
That's a really good question.
We do have these as programs, and we have been putting in bike parking throughout the city. I don't know if there are any on this corridor. Aren't there already? One?
No, on 9th Avenue, we have 3, but they have been installed 10 years ago. Since then, we have requested more and we never got anything.
You know what's funny is I haven't seen those, Christine.
You have not?
Yeah, I've never seen those requests.
Oh, we have asked for one, which is at the corner of 23rd and 9. And we have been asking, we sent a letter 2 years ago about that.
Please send those directly to me, Christine.
Okay.
And I can try. I think we need partners though on those. So
no, we
that
have
might
a
be part of the
partner.
problem.
We have a partner there. We knew that.
Right on. Let's do
Can
it.
I add to that? I mean, maybe we could get similar bike parking that they have in those indoor things by Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn, similar to that, where those bikes
No.
where you can leave the bikes maybe more towards the Bryant Park or the 30 over there, you know, where the 34th Street Partnership can run for the indoor parking.
Well, that's a thought, but we don't have the space for that. So Ted, if we are asking here parking corrals, right?
Yes, that's the word.
That would be feasible. I mean, you guys have the capacity.
Well, that's a very good question. Well put. We are having trouble meeting demand right now with the amount of bike parking we're trying to meet with the COVID issues, along with funding, et cetera. But we will definitely, if they've been sitting out there, I definitely want to know about them and we can add them in. And I think that we're going to have to, in Midtown, we're taking this really seriously and we're trying to get as many bike lanes as possible. Sorry, bike parking racks. Any way we can, really. This is going to be a problem. And, you know, it already is a problem. So we're gonna do our best. There's been funding issues, you know. I work for the government. Sorry, but we're gonna have to try harder. So
right, I agree. Okay.
But I think
What
in
else?
response to those questions is that we do have programs for that, but there's nothing specific. Like those usually run on a separate track. Maybe the parking, but the street seats is sort of a separate track than the bike lanes. But that doesn't mean that they can't also.
Yeah, but that's kind of, you know, that's kind of unfortunate. I mean, it should be like part of a cookie cutter. If you put a bike lane every so 100 feet, you would put a corral, you know.
The corral, I see, but the street seats, if that's with a partner with, you know,
yeah,
program.
Okay.
Okay, so this is wide. What does the 11th Ave bicycle connection look like? This is a very dangerous area with cars going into the tunnel.
I think we answered that, right?
Okay, and then why not 40, 41st Street? They both go into West River and East River, West 39th and 38th.
Wait, this gentleman, 944, it's your turn. Oh no, he's not. Go ahead.
Okay, so the other question was why not West 40th and 41st Street too? They both go straight to Hudson Riverway and East River. 39th and 38th are blocked by Javits and another building on the East River.
40 and 41st are horrible in the middle of the Lincoln Tunnel. I don't know who would want to bike there.
Right, and if
Unless
there's
they
additional
the protected bike lane that exists further north on 11th Avenue.
Say that, Jeffrey.
Well, there's a protected bike lane north of 42nd Street on 11th Avenue. And if that was to be extended, you know, further south, there'd be some cohesion in the network.
Oh yeah, yes. Okay. So next question. Janine.
Okay, so this is the next one. The crosstown bike lanes on 12th and 13th Street are the most comfortable to use due to the offset turns and wide buffer. Are there any issues with implementing these on 38, 39?
Something that we touched on a little bit when we were talking about intersection treatments. There's no issues. Actually, we are including offset crossings, offset turns at some of those intersections where, you know, it doesn't meet the signal warrant for a full split phase. So that's definitely something that we can.
So which one are you going to do?
We will be doing both offset crossings, split phases, and LPIs according to the needs at each intersection.
But I thought you were planning it. So didn't you already decide that?
Yes. Oh, do you want the actual location?
Yeah.
So it's 39th and 8th Avenue, 38th and 1st Avenue, 39th and 11th Avenue, and 39th.
No, just our district. We don't want the whole world. 39 and 8th?
38th and 1st Avenue. 39th.
I don't want 1st Avenue. We are not 1st Avenue.
Okay, so it's 39th and 9th Avenue.
And so what's the treatment there?
So it's depending on the 30th and 8th and the 39th and 9th Avenue, which are in your CVs, are both split phases.
Okay. Yeah, because there is a high volume of Lincoln Tunnel cars making a left turn there, so we need to separate that. Okay. All right, so it looks like we have, we still have something, Janine?
One more question. It says, what will the connection to the West Side River Path look like on 40th Street?
Oh, that's a good question.
Is the question about the actual connection between, like, across 12th Avenue, or?
Yes.
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 So at that location, the crosswalk is on the south leg of the intersection, and that's also part of why the bike lane would align on the south side. So they would use that existing crossing phase to get over to the Greenway.
Okay. Yeah, it says crossing the West Side Highway.
Yes. Does that answer that question? Sorry.
I guess.
Right. So in some of the other crosstowns, we just use the crosswalk, which is oftentimes only on one leg of the intersection crossing 12th Avenue. And so that's often why a certain side of the street has been prioritized for the lane.
Okay.
That's all of them.
I have a question on intersection.
Jeffrey.
Will there be dotted green going across the intersection on this treatment?
Those are used, yes, for the offset crossings. I believe that the split phases have a different marking. So there are different markings that correspond with the different intersection treatments. 52nd and 55th was the first project where we introduced the dashed green markings to the intersection at the offset crossings. So I believe that we will also be using those on these offset crossings.
Because we're definitely going to want some kind of marking to continue through the intersection.
Right.
So.
Okay. Well, I guess you have heard a lot of the comments, and the idea would be, thank you so much for your presentation. We are very excited, even though we are picky. You know?
That is Christine, that's perfect. You would put it exactly correct.
Right. We just love our bike lanes and our streets. So we really want to make them perfect, and we have a long way to go. For the committee, I don't know that I can recap everything, but we'll put all the comments we've put out there in the letter. And, you know, the only question I have for the committee is that if the bike lane is not physically protected, do we want to have a deny unless, or what do we want to do as far as, I know we have a strong feeling about having physical protection. So what is the nature of our letter?
Have we ever done a deny unless on a bike lane installation or something of this gratitude? No, it's not the right word.
Gravity.
Thank you.
Right. Or yeah. So I don't know. Tell me. I want to hear from the committee. What's your thought about how strong do we feel about the protection on the bike lane?
Well, I think we ought to do deny unless, because we really feel strong about the protected bike lane. They can always come back and negotiate. We can always come back and negotiate again. I mean, you know, they're not going to want to stop this. They have the other two boards, so they've got. You know, and it makes logical sense to have protected bike lanes, and we have the people behind us. We just, you know, I mean, as the citizens, our constituents are behind us.
What about everybody else, David? Everybody?
You're talking about doing it where the parking is basically loading. Is that right?
I'm thinking about doing it everywhere, because really, the only parking we have is loading. And therefore, I think we're going to have a lot of trucks. And then we have places where there is just no parking, no loading, nothing, you know, so you are going to be exposed.
Yeah, I'm in favor of it. Although, you know, I mean, I know you get tired of me hearing me say that. I mean, I think the armadillo is a great solution. I mean, I realize that sometimes people will go over them. but the vast majority of time, they won't. And
Right.
they break. You know, the problem with those flappable bollards is these big trucks run over them a few times, and that's the end of them. And, you know, DOT doesn't come out and fix them, you know, on a dime. So
Right.
I think that there's a treatment on 52nd and 11th that's very good on the corner there. That is an armadillo with very tightly positioned flexible bollards. But that overall the point needs to be, we need to encourage commercial activity to right size its fleets. 53-foot tractor trailers are illegal in Manhattan, but they're here all the time. Box trucks could shrink if it wasn't as easy to drive a massive box truck down a street like they do today. So let's harden our infrastructure to make it so that there's some shifting on the other end, and it's not just us accommodating.
I agree with you, Jeffrey. The problem is enforcement. Is it a state law? Maybe we can get state troopers to enforce the
Wait.
truck?
I just want an answer. We don't want to resolve everything. So
I'm fine with deny unless.
Okay. So what about Brett?
I mean, honestly, the history is when we have a strong opinion about something, we put it in the letter. But I think we still support. I think we should still support the bike lane regardless. We need to have strong language so later on, when, you know, if we have to come back and say we told you so, we got the history of that. You know, I mean, I think the bikes on the sidewalk is a bigger issue. But even then, you know, I think we need to strongly urge. But the reality is, we don't get those concrete barriers like in 8th Avenue on the side streets. We don't get those.
Well, why not?
Because they don't have concrete there. It's a
No, I don't mean
rarity.
concrete. I mean about the bollards. I mean, you know, there's no reason not to put the bollards there.
Yeah. I mean, I think we urge it. You know, we make it strong language. I know, but I still think we need to support the bike lane regardless. I don't. You know, we're not going to hold this whole thing up because we're not getting that barrier that we don't have in any other.
Well, we want them to come back with a better design. You know.
We always want them. We have a very long history of consistently asking for the same thing. We don't.
And we
have
still didn't get it.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, so are we going to hold up a whole bike lane for, you know, the bicycle safety and, you know, the last piece of the master plan, or let them finish the plan and then they can come back and pour some concrete or put whatever barriers in later? I mean, that's
okay.
It doesn't make sense to say no.
I got it. We have Jeffrey, David, who else is Martin, Sarah? What do you feel about that?
All the way projection, but design change.
Yeah. And Sarah, are you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going back and forth in my head. I obviously agree with a lot of the sentiments, particularly like Jeffrey's vocalized throughout the meeting, and agree in particular like that, you know, bringing bikes onto the sidewalk at that stretch is just like totally unacceptable. So I think that's even the thing that I feel strongest about, like why on earth would that be an acceptable solution? I do worry that, you know, but like I also agree with Brett, and like I think we should be supportive of the bike lane. There are not enough crosstown bike routes. And I'm honestly, I'd kind of defer to you, Christina, if anyone can answer this question of if there's been a different situation where the board has ever done something like this, has it actually been an effective tactic or not? So I'm kind of struggling with where to land on this because I don't feel like I have enough of enough like context or historical knowledge to really understand if this is effective or not, or if this is just going to sideline us then.
Well, we did it on 6th Avenue and it was successful. We got something out of it. So, I mean, but it was, I don't enjoy doing it. I mean, just I feel really strongly about that. That's all. I don't enjoy having this, but okay. What about Raksha? What do you think, Raksha?
Yeah, I don't have super strong opinions. I've just been taking notes and listening.
Oh, okay. All right.
Christine, is there an intermediate solution where you approve conditionally? Instead of deny unless you approve?
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that.
You approve, so it's not a denial. You approve only under the condition that they do.
Right.
So you have some things that are suggestions and other things that are conditions.
Right. Okay, well, that sounds like a reasonable compromise. Is
I
to
would bundle
do,
that into a motion.
yeah, this is a motion, and that covers all the comments we have made, and that would be the format of the letter, right? You are making a motion, Jeffrey?
Yes, so moved.
Okay. Second, we have a second?
Second.
I second it.
Okay. All right, all in favor? Nobody
Aye.
can see anything. Somebody opposed, you better speak loud. Present, not eligible. Okay, so this is done. Ted and Kimberly, thank you so much. And your team also, Aline and Olgin. Very good presentation, and we're very, very excited, but we need more and we need more and
Sorry,
better.
I think Ted has his hand up.
Yeah, where is he?
I'm
Ted.
right here. I wasn't,
Yes.
it's probably too late in the game, but I just wanted you guys to understand. Actually, you know what? I withdraw my comment. I'm not going to say it.
Do we have a timeline?
Well, they said end of the year, of this year. This is huge.
Look,
Right.
let me actually, can I speak to that for 1 second? That
Sure.
the barrels that are out there, it's not something that we enjoy putting in place. It's my staff planners are going out and moving them every other day. It's not efficient. It's a terrible, we don't really like the
Take them
solution that's
back.
out there
Take them
right now.
back.
Wait, hold on. We're doing our best. And like, you know, there's a lot of resources and there's a lot of energy that gets put into those things. And I'm sorry I look so creepy in the video here. But like, I just want to say that like, we're trying here. So the idea here is we would like to get this in as soon as possible because we don't see the barrels as a very good solution either.
Right.
Please. Okay.
Yes. Got
Ted,
it.
could I make a
Say
quick
tomorrow.
suggestion
That's
about
why I
the
was-
barrels? Ted, could you talk to some of the bids about maintaining those barrels maybe? So this way you guys don't have to do it. I mean, because it helps the bids also if it makes the streets look nicer.
Just forget about that. They know how to do their stuff.
The minute we set them in place, the people park like crazy people on that street, and it's a problem, you know. And if you guys talked about this, it's the amount of deliveries, it's the in and out. These people are just running over the barrels, and it's incredibly frustrating.
Okay, we got to tow the bastards. That's the only solution.
Well, you can't tow them when it's barrels. That's why I'm saying we need to get in there and change these lines.
I see.
Okay. I shouldn't have
Okay,
commented.
well,
I'm sorry.
thank you so much for first hanging in there, for staying that late, and for all the good work you are doing. We know you are doing, you know, your absolute very best, and we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's Olguin who did the most here, and Eileen.
So thank you so much. Janine, what is the next subject we have on the agenda?
The next item is the pedestrian space related to electric bikes and scooter stations.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so there was a rep from Councilmember Rodriguez's office, but she had to jump off.
Oh, that's too bad. Okay. So I suppose you have all read the document that we sent around, which is essentially that no bike parking should be put on the sidewalk if the sidewalk is smaller than 10 feet. And that legislation was introduced, and I was really very annoyed because, I mean, even at 10 feet, if you put a bike parking there, what are you going to do about that, right? So I thought we should send a letter saying, no way, you can't put bike parking on the sidewalk, period.
Second.
Just a question about that. So, I mean, we are always asking for people to, you know, something on the bicycle, you know, the UDOCs or whatever for the deliveries. We get those on the sidewalks, a good deal. Are we saying we don't like those now?
Well, we don't especially like those, but you know, especially when you are talking about a rack or multiple, right?
Yeah, I mean, it might be a little bit of an either or because we have a lot of sidewalk furniture as it is, whether it's the newspaper boxes and
Right.
you know, a lot of things. So I think I don't know if it's we target the bike parking per se, or we make it very clear that we have an expectation for a minimum pedestrian width on a sidewalk, which would de facto exclude a bicycle dock if it's going to impede on that pedestrian width.
I think that's a good idea.
Can I just, that to me was my first reaction also, Brett, but if we don't start mistaking the claim to really change the street in every way we identify it as today, is it going to change? So saying they cannot go on the sidewalk, because like Park Avenue, I know it's not our district, has extremely, you know, 6th Avenue in Midtown, right? Super wide sidewalks. They're going to feel, they still should be in the street, right? It's still a busy part of the city. So
yeah, no, I agree with that. We also have a long history of advocating for trying to get parking spaces used for bicycle parking as well.
It
so
needs
I
to be
think,
equivalent.
you know, that combination that we have of, you know, constantly asking and demanding wider, you know, we're going to get in that next agenda item, is a topic as well, making sure we have a wide enough sidewalk and trying to get parking spaces for these. So I think, you know, instead of saying, no, we don't want this on the sidewalk, you know, I want to try to parlay that into a street parking space. You know, let's keep pushing that agenda item. You know, this is also, I was looking at, you know, the bill. I didn't see our, you know, our rep, you know, Corey Johnson on the sponsor list. So maybe given that he's not on that sponsor list, we can try to really push him to understand that the issue is we're trying to save our sidewalks here. We've been constantly pushing for the parking used for bicycle storage. You know, where are you helping us advocate for that? Can you get us the bill or get that introduced into the bill too? I mean, let's use this position here.
So we could expand that discussion on saying we really need a tremendous push on corrals in parking lanes.
Absolutely.
And so that we can remove those parking from the sidewalk, and then the measurement, this 10 feet is ridiculous. We need like 12 feet or whatever, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, 10 feet with the bike rack on the sidewalk with a little bit of a buffer to the curb, so it's not dangerous to the bike lane. 10 feet feels too small to me, because that basically saying we're giving 2 feet for the bike rack. So yeah, I would give that a minimum of 4 feet. So 12 would be a minimum.
12 feet, right? Okay. All right. So anybody else wants to talk about that? Raise your hand. No? So, oh, yes, Sarah.
I'm sorry, Christine, my internet cut out for a second. When you initially introduced this, did you say that an alternative suggestion we could put would be to advocate for putting these like effective drop zones, corrals, whatever, in a parking lane instead of on the sidewalk? Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure that was out there.
Yeah.
And that
we've been pushing for that for a long time, but we want to take the opportunity of this bill to send it to Corey Johnson and say we are not on board with that, period, you know. And let's help us get more corrals, like we were just having this conversation where the DOT doesn't have the resource to put the corrals. Plus they need a partner. So we have a whole process here that just makes it impossible to put a corral in, you know.
Can I also suggest that maybe it's not this letter, and maybe I need to check the temperature of the committee on this, that much like tree guards, in which the Parks Department has 7 standard tree guards that somebody can privately pay for and install, can DOT come up with a number of corrals that a block association, a restaurant, a bid could buy and install? Right now, we're fully reliant on DOT and their only design of the rings with a couple of planters in the parking lane. Why can't we be more like parks and allow for you know, multiple different designs that have PDC approval and can be done publicly or privately?
That's a good idea. I like that.
I would have them all over the meatpacking district already if I could do that, but I can't.
That's a great idea.
I think it's a great idea.
And we can model it on the tree guard. That another agency sort of has something like that.
I don't.
So
I
yes.
don't think we need to have as many. I don't think we need 7 or 8 bike corral designs.
David, I agree entirely. I was just citing the example that Parks has 7 standard tree guards. Can we even get 1 or 2 for a bike corral, you know?
And we should be able to have an outside provider that we can go directly to. That's the bottom line, you know?
Absolutely.
Rather than everything being on the back of the DOT, you know, let the people who can pay. Okay, so I have like a resolution which say we need to expect 12 feet, put the things in the parking lane, change the process for the corrals, and open the process just like the tree guard.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Opposed? Present, non-eligible? Good. Next.
Christine, just to interrupt you very quickly, I got to get off if you don't mind.
Okay. Okay. Sure. Sorry to lose you.
No, I had to be on another meeting at 9.
Okay. All right. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
So the next subject is open dining in the streets. And you have seen, I mean, you know, Brett has sent us a long email about that. Brett, you want to pose the problem out there?
Sure. I said that you would have had a longer email before. Okay, I'll just kind of go through the notes that I scrolled together. So, so first, what I have to say is really the scope is trying to keep it relevant to Transportation Committee. So, so issues like social distancing in the seating areas, I'm not going to address that. That's not our scope. But the pedestrian area that people are forced into close proximity of patrons and staff, that I think is fair game for us to comment on. So just first, a number of observations that I would put forward. The big one, obviously, we've seen just, you know, a tremendous number of sidewalk dining areas. The sidewalk life, the activity, I think is for some very exciting, exhilarating. It's the kind of things that New York City, for whatever reason, hasn't been known for, even though we've had the ability to do sidewalk cafes. And now they're mushrooming everywhere, which for some people it's really exciting. We should keep in mind, I'm sure there are probably going to be some neighbors that we have that are on a residential block and are not happy with the noise. So it's not all great, but I think the spirit of it, I think, at least my personal opinion is it's a pretty amazing thing to see in a live city. So, so the 8-foot clearance on the sidewalks that we are always demanding and expecting, we're not getting that. We know the regulations only call for, I think, 6 feet, but you know, even the 6 feet isn't really happening in many of the locations that I've been seeing, and all the self-policing that's supposed to be occurring in terms of where the seats are supposed to be and the behavior, it's simply not happening by and large. And the city is really, as far as I can tell, not doing any enforcement on this because the rules aren't being adhered to. Other things I'm noticing, the waiter service, that's something that the street seating doesn't permit. That does seem to be an issue in some locations. There was one place on 23rd Street, close to 9th Avenue, that you can see the waiters at a busy time going back and forth. So pedestrians sometimes have to negotiate that with the waiters and even just people waiting for tables. And there are some places where you'll even see a staff location placed really kind of in that pedestrian right-of-way area, impeding the flow. That's not too common, but that happens sometimes too. Where the food pickup service is on the sidewalk, this is one thing that, you know, we mentioned, you know, came up as our part of our conversation commenting before this was rolled out, where you do have food pickup. There's one place I'm going to pick on a little bit. It's on 24th Street near 10th Avenue. They have the food pickup, they have the seats. You sometimes get a line on the sidewalk for people waiting for the food. It causes some sidewalk congestion. There are a couple locations next to each other on 23rd Street that have illegal storm vestibules. They're not allowed to exceed 18 inches from the front of a building. And they're not allowed to be there in the summertime from like sometime in March through November. But they are there. The city rarely enforces those. You have to call 311 like 5 times to get those addressed. So you have sidewalk cafes, the outdoor seating where these storm vestibules are causing a need for even more space on the sidewalk. So again, there's a lot of compliance issues that even go beyond the open streets, the open seating that's making this more of a challenge for the sidewalk space. Also, there's instances like on 8th Avenue, there's a couple of bars that have their seating on the other side of the bike lane. So we have the protected bike lane, then we have seating, and then we have the street. So you have patrons going through the bike lane just to get to the seating area, servers going there to clean and service. So that's making the bike lane, and plus more garbage from the outdoor seating gets into the bike lane as well. So the bike lanes are less effective where they are straddling the bike lanes. So some things that I would want to suggest as recommendations. So the first and probably most important thing is, I think, given that we do have a really, as I would put it, severe lack of self and city enforcement of the temporary rules, which are in place really to help the small businesses. Long term, I think we need to make sure that we help the city understand that we would expect that the city to revert back to the previous conditions where businesses have to apply for sidewalk cafes, and all the other things that we expect, the 8-foot sidewalk clearance and things like that. So, we're helping people in the short term, the summer, it's an emergency, fine, but long term, I don't think the current situation works. And the other thing is, this is an opportunity for us to remind the city that the fact that they come to community boards to get our opinions for these applications for sidewalk cafes, this is why we need to have the input, because we will identify and recognize some of these problems before they occur. That said, I don't want to completely squash the positives from the outdoor seating. So I think, given the situation, I would want to consider the possibility of expanding the street seat program to allow for a limited version of the current waitering service that they have now. Even though the waiters do have to cross back and forth in front of the sidewalk, as long as there's a minimum sidewalk width, the clearance is there, they're not setting up a station in the sidewalk right away. And I would also, if it's a non-emergency situation and tenants are paying or have full capacity inside their business, I would expect that there's some kind of market value established that someone should have to actually pay the city market value for that parking space. So, it's not free rent in lieu of, losing a parking space to the city. So, so I think, but I think one thing I would not have been open to before COVID that now I would, identify as a possibility, because of the benefit of the street life is, maybe we do let businesses as of right, through the proper application, get permission to use the street with waitering service. And finally, I'd say that, given how many businesses are really enjoying this outdoor space, let's use this as a way to help promote additional street seat program applicants. Hopefully we can keep the streets lively in a way that gets the community input, unlike right now, but let's keep the momentum of the street activity. So that's my long speech. I'll go on mute now.
Wow, good stuff. Good stuff. Well, it's a good complement to one concern I have had, which is more for the period of the COVID, is that the guidelines that the city has given of 8 feet of clearance does not allow for distancing. Because if you have 8 feet, that means that you have 6 feet of distancing, and then you have to have the pedestrian walking on 2 feet, the other 2 feet, right? So it just doesn't work. And I think that we need to bring it up. And that helps also the discussion for the future, because when we approved the our outdoor dining, what we approved was, you know, you need to have 12 feet of sidewalk, and if you have an installation in the roadway, then you should have nothing on the sidewalk, or you should have the reverse. You should put everything on the sidewalk and give a walk lane in the street for the pedestrian. But you shouldn't have the pedestrian in between the two, you know, a cafe and a street, and especially because you don't have any distancing and it doesn't make any sense. So we are going out of our way to say, well, everybody should be, you know, 6 feet apart, but when it comes to pedestrian and diners, people can be 1 foot apart. And nobody has a problem with that. So I would add that to the collection of things you said and say we need immediately to change those measurements, because those measurements are not distance, do not allow for distancing. And the solution would be either to put everything in the street or everything on the sidewalk, and then the pedestrian would have a lane to walk on the side in the street. Which is what we put in our last resolution.
Christine, we've been advocating walk lanes, and this might be the way to give them a real foothold that people actually will begin to understand, because I think folks are going to be more sympathetic, not just in the short term, but the long term, to the idea of restaurants using significantly more outdoor space. And this might be a real in here for us, and especially to further a means of protected infrastructure, dedicated infrastructure for particular types of uses: people, cyclists, vehicles, and restaurant space. The only thing I am hesitant on, Brett, with the terms of your proposal, in terms of the fee structure, until we revamp parking fees for vehicles, I don't know that we want to be pushing restaurants into an unlevel territory of payment, right? They pay for their sidewalk cafe. This year that got waived. I don't anticipate, who knows if that'll happen next year or not, but unless the car fees go up considerably, I don't see how we get to extract it from the restaurants.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of throwing it out there as a, I mean, it's,
yeah, I mean, like the idea. I just wanted to lay out sort of the equity factor of it.
The idea, you know, the fact that you know, like, I don't know how the fee for the sidewalk cafe was derived. It's clearly not, you know, market. They're paying less for the sidewalk space than they are for the space in their restaurant, I'm assuming. I mean, given what we know that they pay. So, you know, is that fair that something's public right of way is being used for profit for small business? I mean, that's, or, you know, so now his restaurants are small businesses, but, you know, the point is, you know, what's the public give back that a restaurant gets when they're able to profit more from using public space? So that's, well, I mean, it's a bigger question. I don't have an answer for it. I'm just suggesting that the market, you know, and what the seed of the answer might be in what you just said is, if we know if we can figure out what the city gets from the cars parking there revenue wise, so is that a comparable give back, you know, instead of the cars parking, let the restaurant rent it instead? I mean, maybe that's the seed.
I agree with what Jeffrey said 100%. And to add to this, you know, right now this is an emergency. So to tack on fees to businesses that are struggling, restaurants, and getting, I think at this time, once it becomes permanent down the road, if it does become permanent, then we can talk about a fee structure.
Oh, I think that's what Brett was saying.
But for now,
when it's permanent, he's talking about that. That's what he's saying.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So anybody else wants to?
I just had the one comment again for permanent. It doesn't seem like a good idea to have restaurants crossing bike lanes to get to patrons.
Yeah.
That seems like that's an accident waiting to happen. And whose fault is it? Right? I mean, there's no crosswalk, right?
But it's New York classic of needing to do something and not planning for it, or being unwilling to be bold to fix it.
Yeah.
Well, at a minimum, we should talk about the fact that I think the general feeling that I have and I'm hearing here is that, you know, the way it is was good for, you know, a crash solution here, but this is not in its, it cannot continue like that. There are some parameters here which are not even working right now because of the distancing, and then they certainly are not going to work in the future. And so we need to really think about how we roll it out next year and improve on that, so that we have the pedestrian, the bikes, and the dining. I mean, although we do want dining in the parking lane, right, instead of parking, but it needs to be structured in a way which is, you know, viable for everybody.
Yeah, Christine, if we're putting any of this in writing, I just want to make sure the point like very clearly comes across that like we are supportive of taking more space away for this.
Yeah.
So certainly there are plenty of streets in our district where it's, and it's not entirely clear to me why, and so I need to do some more pushing on this. But you know, it's very piecemeal, right? Application of having actually on-street dining sections, which I think again for all the distancing concerns that are being raised is the better, at least temporary and short, medium-term solution versus a restaurant maintaining its sidewalk outdoor space. So it's not clear to me why it's not being more broadly utilized by restaurants. I talked to one restaurant owner. I think there was some initial confusion, you know, between restaurant owners and DOT about like what the requirements were. She was saying the city has not been consistently enforcing them, which has made it hard also for restaurant owners, and some are kind of actually playing by the rules. It costs more to put down planters and things, and some aren't. So she was even saying from a restaurant owner's perspective, she'd appreciate greater enforcement of the rules to level the playing field. So I think maybe like the enforcement piece could come in, but also pushing the city to really make it easier and really push to open up even more of this space and help restaurants access it. Basically, because I'm just not sure why more of the street space isn't actually being utilized by restaurants right now.
Right. Well, I have an example on 9th Avenue. I can tell you a restaurant has been reaching out to Corey Johnson. He got me involved, and the rules have been completely confusing. They have applied, one guy has applied, and then the inspector came out. He installed the whole restaurant, and then another day the inspector came out and said, you have to remove everything. And then the rules for the other one is completely confusing. When they send them papers, they say, oh, you have a problem, close it. And they don't tell them what is the problem. So it's very, 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 very difficult right now. And, you know, that's probably why we had sidewalk cafes. The rule were much more stable. But I think we need more space. We need to take more space, but we also have to take it in a way that on the sidewalk, there's still space for pedestrian to go through. And right now, I don't think we have that. I mean, in a lot of places.
Yeah, exactly. So I would just love us to push the city to be more visionary in like pushing this concept out and helping restaurants do it.
Yes. And
making that the point that that's the safety solution here.
Right.
Like linking those two.
A little side note, I pass it's out of our district, but on Elizabeth Street and Bowery, they put on two opposite corners open streets for restaurants. And it's worked wonders because the street is so narrow that there's so much less traffic. A truck couldn't even fit, because it's on the corner, a truck couldn't even fit down that street. And so I see it because I bike it every day from work. So because it's bottlenecked at the corner, you can't get in. So that's good. So this way, it's a way of enforcing the traffic. And it's very, a medium-sized car can fit, but a big truck cannot. And it's so calm. That's why I don't know if the specific block, I'm talking about the block where the Elizabeth Street Park, the Elizabeth Street Park, that street, but on the Bowery part of it, there's two restaurants on that corner, so you can't get in with a big truck.
So let me see if the public has others. I have 23 participants, but Janine, that doesn't sound right.
There's 9 attendees in the public section.
Yeah, and 14 panelists.
Okay. So I mean, you know, I think on this letter it would be a summary saying, okay, there are a number of issues right now. This is not maybe the way to continue for the future. For the future, we need the city to be clearer and to have better spacing, more space for pedestrian, and pushing more restaurants to take that solution, or giving us a walk lane. So the idea is really taking more space from the cars.
Oh, there's a raised hand in the attendees.
Who?
There's a raised hand in the attendees.
Where? I don't see it. Oh, okay. This is
212 number.
Talking permitted. 9:40.
Yes, hi.
Yes.
Hi, this is Laszlo Reichard again. I wanted to bring up a problem that I have with one of the restaurants on 38th Street and 9th Avenue in front of my building.
Yeah.
And what it is that they actually have the tables set out on the street itself. But then they also, like you had mentioned, they actually have it in both places, which is right in front of the store itself. So they have, 2 sets of tables. Now, the problem is not the tables that are the ones in the street is perfectly fine, even though they don't practice the 6 feet separation, but nevertheless, it's open space and, they're out there. But my problem is that the table that's in front of the store itself, in front of the restaurant itself, is exactly right alongside our entrance to the building. And several times, not just me, but, because I ride my bike and I have to get my bike into the building somehow. And almost half the time I have to ask, especially if people are sitting at the table, I have to ask them to move their chairs so that I can get into my building. And part of the problem is that they're not wearing masks. I'm already a senior citizen. I'm really not interested in, catching the virus from anyone. And on top of that, many of them are smoking cigarettes right out there. I don't know what the rule is for smoking cigarettes on the sidewalk if you're sitting at a sidewalk cafe, but nevertheless, it is very infuriating. Now, okay, I don't take my bike in and out every day, but there is also people with children. They have to take their, baby carriage in and out, and almost inevitably, not only that, the mailman had a problem trying to get in. I mean, everyone has to sort of, make excuses to get into the building because the table is right by the door, literally right by the door. I'm sorry?
The setup is not proper, is not legal. The setup is supposed to leave 3 feet from the door.
Well, we're talking about 0 feet.
Right.
I mean, we're not even talking about feet. We're not even talking about inches. I mean, literally
you can call 311 and report on that. And that will get to the DOT list and an inspector.
Okay, I can do that. I was hoping not to do that, but I was okay. I will. I guess I'll have to do it because it's not just interfering with me as much, but it's interfering with everybody in the building coming in and out.
Right.
The other thing I also wanted to mention, just real quickly, and I remember you were mentioning this yesterday, with licensing, is about the fact that you have loud music. Now, it's not people actually pumping music out of their store. They actually have speakers on the street.
That's completely illegal.
I know that. I'm just letting you know that if you walk along 9th Avenue, you'll find that. And also, when you have the open windows, the accordion windows that they can open on the front of the store, I've actually noticed that people are sitting inside the window, which I know is, again, illegal, but they're doing it, So it's just something I just wanted to bring up, so that, you're aware of it.
Yeah.
But that's basically it. I mean, I'm actually very much in support of helping the restaurants, sort of regain their possibility of being, to stay alive. But, they do need to adhere to rules. And they also need to, obviously, consider other people who are residents in the neighborhood. And I thank you all again. Have a good night.
Okay, thanks. Marcia Sweek, you had your hand up. Marcia?
Yes, thank you. Hello, good evening.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you all for taking the time to go through all of this and such. I think the temporary situation we have for the street availability to allow the restaurants to expand their business is wonderful. I've noticed in other neighborhoods in New Jersey and even outside of New York as well, and other states, what a lot of places have been doing, and I'm kind of curious why we haven't been doing this more, is especially on the weekends, similar to a street fair, they block off sections and only their restaurants are using that center space of the streets to put tables so that there's plenty of space and all the businesses can enjoy having customers. People can go out and enjoy dinner for the weekend, Friday night through to Sunday evening. The communities are even having like live musicians playing guitars and such to try to encourage people to come out into the community and keep the businesses flourishing since they have limited abilities now. So I think that's a great opportunity. We do it all the time in the summer for street fairs. Why wouldn't we do that, especially for these restaurants? And living just off of 9th Avenue on 36th Street, for me, I see the bigger issue is the homeless shelters have created such a safety issue that's the biggest challenge the restaurants are going to have with anybody sitting outside trying to eat, because you virtually can't. Until that's addressed, anything for outside dining is almost a ridiculous concept. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marcia. By the way, there are some streets which have been identified to do what you are talking about. For example, 46th Street between 8 and 9 is doing that in our district. But they have, DOT has limited that to some streets only.
And it's also that you have to have a managing partner, and they, even if you have a willing restaurant, DOT is really looking at who the managing partner is. Bids are the go-to. A neighborhood association is possible, but unfortunately, they've made that inappropriately difficult for various places.
But thanks for the suggestion, and keep an eye out, and I hope the homeless situation will become better. Yeah. So do I have like a resolution for this last thing, which is, I think if we are summarizing by saying this is we love it, we want more of it, but we want it adjusted for the future, essentially. We want more in the parking lane and the moving lanes. We want more space for the pedestrians. Immediately, we want distancing, and we don't have it now. And that's where we go from there, right?
I think the lead has to be, we must reprioritize our streets.
Right. Okay. Yes.
I would suggest. I mean, the main message is that we acknowledge that this is a temporary thing this year, but the system that's in place where there's an application process and community engagement along the way is something that's missing right now. Which so the problems that we have observed are in large part because there isn't an application process, there isn't enforcement, and the community hasn't been involved. But we still want to find ways to encourage street life and street and city vibrance.
Okay, so all of that. Do we have a resolution here?
So moved.
Yes. Brett, second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? I know we are exhausted.
Aye.
All exhausted. And anyone opposed? Present non-eligible? Well, I want to thank you all, and thank you, Colleen Chattergoon from the DOT, who stayed around all the time, and Janine, who's been so helpful. I don't know how we could have managed this meeting without Janine.
Hi, everyone. It's Colleen from DOT. I'm sorry I didn't say anything, but I'm listening to all of your comments, and I'm glad you've had the discussion about open restaurants. I know it's not a perfect program, and the city is really trying to help the businesses. And of course, you're going to have some bad actors and good actors out there. And, I know enforcement is important, and we haven't, been seeing that happening as frequently as we would like. So we are encouraging people to call 311. But I'm listening to all of your comments, and believe it or not, I will have a conversation about this tomorrow in our 10 o'clock conference call, and I will raise all these issues that you discussed, okay?
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Pauline Ferrante from the Department of Health was also on for this whole time, so I'd like to thank
Is
her.
she?
For
Where is she? I didn't.
Pauline, she's on there.
I don't have her. Is she?
Pauline Ferrante.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Pauline.
How are you? So I've also been taking a lot of notes as well. And we have been seeing an increase in cases among the youth, the younger population, 20 to 29. So we don't know exactly what is causing this, but we really want people to just maintain the core 4 guidance, which is stay home if you're sick, wear a face covering in public, wash your hands frequently, and maintain social distancing. Thank you.
But Pauline, before you go, I mean, the problem is that the guidelines we have do not require the 6 feet, you know, you understand that.
Understood.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, we
and
understand
that's a major problem because you could have a pedestrian, you know, sitting on the top of a diner within 1 foot.
Yeah, so, you know, Christine, CB4 is not the only community board that raised this. You know, as the gentleman mentioned, you know, there's the issue of diners congregating. There's the issue of noise. There's the issue of serving liquor on the sidewalk. And again, it's the restaurant that has to better manage this. I mean, they applied for the permit, we granted the permit, we want to help them, we want to help the business, but they're responsible for managing.
But Colleen, I mean, what I'm trying to say is that the guideline, if we follow the guideline that DOT published, by definition, we will not be in compliance with the distancing, you know.
I understand, and I totally get that, and
the guideline is a problem. I mean, and I understand we did everything quick, but it's still a problem. Okay.
And you know, keep in mind that the criterias were modified from the beginning. You know, there were issues with the criterias, and we modified them again. That's why there was, you know, some confusion with the restaurants applying.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. And Pauline, I really appreciate it. I'm sorry I didn't call on you earlier. I didn't.
No, that's okay. I'm a fly on the wall listening.
Right. I don't see, for whatever reason, I didn't see you in the list. Oh, here you are, Pauline. Right. Thank you so much for staying, and thank you for everybody for this long meeting.
Thank you, Christine.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Colleen.
Thanks, everyone.
Stay safe,
And
everybody.
Janine.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Have a
Have
good
a great
summer,
summer, everyone.
Bye-bye.